Colleagues, welcome back. May we ask you to please take your seats. These sessions after lunch are always complicated, colleagues. But welcome back, and thank you for staying with us for these very, very long sessions. We're going to start with this afternoon session on localization. We will try to cross the different pathways that we have been exposing and try to make the case of what we will be bringing to the countdown to 2030, but as well the negotiations of the post-2030 agenda. On the timings that you need to have in mind, and we know that we are giving you many, many dates, processes, and spaces, but do have in mind that we need to start thinking what will be our common position for the post-2030 agenda negotiations. This will start in 2026 with the ECOSOC reform and with the HLPF's reform, to be discussed in 2027. For this, what we are bringing are two main initiatives. One is the city's countdown to 2030 that we will try to explain briefly. The other is our local SDG rescue plan that, as you all know, was presented during the UN General Assembly SDG Summit in 2023, which is over 12 coalitions that are multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder, and they are transforming the 2030 agenda implementation. This was our last retreat's thematic and what we discussed here, our SDG rescue plan, the coalitions. If you want to refresh your mind, you have access to this in our webpage. But what we have managed is to bring these coalitions to inform the high-impact initiative of the United Nations on localization that Sebastián from Local 2030 will introduce later. But this was not enough, and the Mayor of Konya, on behalf of our presidency, agreed with the Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohamed to bring her with evidence of what our members are doing to transform the agenda, to accelerate through a retro-planning the implementation, and to inspire other members to bring about transformation of what we are doing. We are kicking off this Cities Countdown 2030 formally today, even though it was politically launched in September. And this is all connected to the high-level political forum, because it is in the high-level political forum where we formally review the SDGs. So we will also talk about the report that we annually do, the localization report that we present on the SDGs that are under review every year. And for this, our colleagues from research and the representative of Public Service International will be presenting the SDGs under review, and we will ask you, as every year, to fill our survey. I will try to briefly explain what the Cities Countdown is, and then we will be discussing about it, and we will open the floor, and we will have two cases from Montevideo and Paris. And then John Aguirre from Paisaje Transversal will try to bring us why methodology matters, why having good practices and good urban planning is meaningful for the implementation of the agenda. If you have any doubts and you want to interrupt, really feel free to do it. Because we know it's very abstract and we're going too technical in the retreat. But the city countdown, and please, my colleagues, I will ask you to go to the next slide, is initiatives led by local and regional governments that are investing millions and are transforming millions of people's lives. They have to be connected with what the Global Sustainable Development Report, this is the GSDR, identified as the 6 areas that will trigger the entire transformation of the 2030 agenda. So this group of scientists, what brought about to the United Nations was the SDGs are not on track. We need to do something to accelerate, and what we are identifying that it's possible to accelerate and to make bankable projects, market-ready initiatives, is to develop these 6 transitions, that they trigger SDGs, that in consequence will trigger the implementation of the entire agenda. I will not go into all of them, and I will not try to explain you, since we have many other experts that will be able to do it here, but as you will see, they are not inventing anything. They are just putting the thought in a way that if we invest at the same time in each of the 6 transitions, all together, we will be able to do better in the implementation of the agenda. So what we are trying to bring is a first set of around 20 initiatives that can prove that we are already investing on this and that we are changing the life of people and that we will be ready for 2030 to deliver on localization. Happy to discuss more about this, but I will try to be honest with you. This will be a 2-year process. We are in the making. The methodology has to be secured, and the way of specifically reporting to the 2030 agenda through the high-impact initiatives is already to be discussed, and that's why we have our partners here to go about it. So having said this, allow me to introduce again to the head of the Secretariat of the Local 2030 Coalition, who they manage formally in the United Nations, the high-impact initiative on localization. So Sebastián, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pablo. Yeah, maybe I'll stand up, and to start with, I want to right away offer an apology to my fellow panelists and to the room, because I will have to run to the train station right after my last word. I'm sorry for this, but I will continue to engage with you all to know about the discussions and what can be done about it. But I will briefly present the High Impact Initiative. I had a couple of slides, but in the meanwhile, maybe just to let you know that the idea of the High Impact Initiative, although the Local 2030 Coalition is indeed an initiative. It's only there? Okay, perfect. Perfect. It's indeed a high-impact initiative. It has been acknowledged as such, and Pablo already said a word about it. The idea of the high-impact initiative is to act as an umbrella that allows for all of your impact initiatives on the ground to be reported at the highest level. So it's all about impact and not just only about advocacy. And in this sense, I will end with the relationship with the cities countdown. And also in the SDG Summit, when we were identified as a high impact initiative, mentioning, and Pablo already done it, that UCLG or the Global Task Force presented a decalogue of high impact coalitions, and there was the GTF was one, of course, but there was also others like Cities Alliance, the Global Call for Action on Migrants and Refugees, etc. So we are one of the 12 high impact initiatives that are catalyzing, according to the UN system, impact on the ground and accelerating as such the implementation of the Agenda 2030 and the concrete results and impact on people's lives, with the systemic transformations that are induced by, as Pablo was saying, induced by their centrality to the agenda. So localization is one of them, and action at local level. The contribution of the High Impact Initiative are capacity building, the scaling up and promotion of action on the ground, and the possibility to leverage partnerships and finance to scale up impact. And we identified our contribution to the 6 transitions that were mentioned by Pablo by fostering multi-level governance structures, bridging various sectors to address multiple territorial challenges, strengthening multi-stakeholder capacities, enhancing collaboration, and leveraging resources to finance a pipeline of local level initiatives. So you see, it's like capacity building, planning, budgeting, finance, and concrete initiatives, large-scale project to advance the sustainable development on the ground. We can go to the next. So this is, it's a bit long, and don't worry, I will not go through all of this, but you have, for all high-impact initiatives, you have short-term deliverables, medium-term priorities, and longer-term transformations. So on the short term, we are already there, and a couple have already been secured. But then what I want to stress is more like the concrete impact on the ground that Cities Countdown and others are delivering, and through your constituencies and through your action. And so this is where we will be able to showcase impact. It's more on longer term priorities. we say longer term, not long term, because 5 years is already short to medium term. So we need to leverage solutions that are existing. As I was saying yesterday, it's not about starting new things. We don't have time for this. It's about scaling up what exists, and what exists is in your in your constituencies, in your cities, regions, etc., and acknowledge them as critical drivers of sustainable development on the ground. And I want to stress, where is it? Yeah, for instance, 1,000 local governments join efforts to advance the SDGs at the local level. So this is quantitative, and it can be a hard number, but what is interesting behind this is the qualitative aspect, the impact on people's life, and how we are able to demonstrate that when you include from the design phase local and regional governments, but also the other stakeholders that they are able to catalyze and to convene, you have a higher appropriation, higher ownership, higher leadership, and higher impact on human lives. And yeah, the third, because I think I'm already running out of time, I wanted just to stress, so the work we are, as you know, yesterday I presented it, we have all our UN members, the different UN entities, we have different constituencies also, national governments, local and regional governments, civil society, academia, private sector, youth. So all of them are contributing to the high impact initiative, but we would focus on the work with local and regional governments here. And we have discussed with UCLG and the GTF the possibility of having the cities countdown reflected in the reporting of the high impact initiative to the HLPF, each high level political forum. Each year we are reporting, and we are showcasing stories, champions, impact, evidence, etc. And so the cities countdown is a critical contribution to it, amongst other tools that are listed there. I will stop here. I just want to mention some cities but I think you already presented them. But we have Konya, we have Guadalajara, we have of course Paris and Montevideo that are here sharing panel with me, and that are already having transformative impact in the way they advance sustainable development on the ground. And this is what the High Impact Initiative is all about, transforming systems to impact human lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. And well, it's important for us that you see that we are bringing about what we have been discussing here for the formal processes of both reporting, but as well, not only the places to advocate, but to present evidence of what we are doing. And then, for instance, as you saw in what Sebastian presented, the coalitions, they are, of course, quantitative, but in quality, it's everything that we are doing. Here we have the call to action for local migrants and refugees, the Global Observatory on Proximities, the Culture 2030 goal campaign. We have the Alliance, the Global Alliance of Care, which is all these coalitions that we are bringing about through the GTF, and that they have thousands of projects of what we are doing. So I think we will be ready to deliver, Sebastian. And this was the agreement that our presidency and Emilia had both with the DSG, the SG, and the Undersecretary General Guy Ryder, who is sending tomorrow a message to our presidency on the Cities Countdown initiative. So thank you very much. We know that you have to leave. Feel free to leave the room, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We will do a break now in between the panel that will be moderated by my colleague Jordi, Assistant Secretary General for Knowledge Co-Creation, to this year's HLPF. As you know, every year we review different SDGs, and we present the localization report since 2017, I will say. So we can say that we have the whole story of the state of the art of localization. And this year we are repeating SDGs, so we will have track from the ones reported 5 years ago. So for this, allow me to introduce Ana Calvete, the Head of Research at United Cities and Local Governments, who is with the team coordinating our report to this year's HLPF. Ana.
Thank you, Pablo, and hi, everyone. I wanted to start with a kind of positive note, because I've been following the implementation of the SDGs since like almost the beginning in 2015. And I've been able to track this progress that has been made, and these efforts that we're putting on the table have a meaning, right? Just like last year at the HLPF, we were able to see many, like more and more sessions co-organized by local and regional government associations and networks. We were able to see more and more sessions also on voluntary local reviews, voluntary subnational reviews. There was also a session, I remember, on SDG localization, where national governments were called to discuss their SDG localization strategies. And it struck us, because we had never seen it before, how many national governments, they gave the microphone to their local representatives. That was a big change that has to be acknowledged. So things are changing. This is thanks to the advocacy that we all do, like individually, in groups, as part of the GTF, with our partners. And it's also, let me say, thanks to the research that we do, and that kind of sustains all of this advocacy that we bring forward. And this is the instrument that we use from the research perspective for this endeavor is the yearly report that Pablo was mentioning. We're producing now the 9th edition of this yearly report, so we have been able to track change over time as well from this research perspective. This is a unique exercise. No other institution in the world has this, produces this rich and bottom-up and solid research exercise on how SDG localization is gaining track. And during these 9 years, we have been able to showcase this success, these inspiring practices from local and regional governments. Actually, we have showcased over 4,500 best practices from over 1,300 local and regional governments from around the world, so this is not bad. And we have also been able to monitor how, despite all of these efforts at the local level, we still need to keep advocating for a stronger enabling environment in terms of multi-level governance, policy coherence, a reframing of these financing systems, of the international multilateral system. This is something that we have already been discussing, and that we, from the research department at UCLG, on behalf of UCLG, on behalf of the Global Task Force, are able to bring to this table. We also know and are increasingly aware that this is not the effort of one, that we cannot do this alone, and that we need to join forces with all of you here, with our members, with our GTF networks, with the partners. And this is why in recent years we have been working with other organizations that share our goals towards this SDG localization. We have been working with the New York University on SDG localization, on the SDG 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions. We have been working with ICLEI. I don't know where Yunus is, but he has been here for these 2 days. We are working this year with WHO. We are also working with Public Services International on the localization of SDG 8. And here I would like to stop for a second and give the floor to my colleague Rebecca Céspedes from PSI, so she can give us a small overview on why this collaboration between UCLG, GTF, and PSI is so important when we want to make the case around the localization of SDG 8. Rebecca? Como quieras.
Buenas tardes a todos y a todas los aquí presentes. Mi nombre es Rebeca Céspedes Alvarado, resido en Costa Rica, un país conocido por muchos por nuestro querido exalcalde Johnny Araya. Represento a la Internacional de Servicios Públicos, una federación sindical mundial que representa más de 30 millones de afiliados con representación en 154 países alrededor del mundo. En nombre de nuestro secretario general, Daniel Bertosa, queremos darle las gracias a la CGLU por tomarnos en cuenta para esta investigación que hablaba la compañera sobre los ODS número 8. ¿Por qué es importante para el sindicalismo el ODS 08? Ya que habla del trabajo decente, del crecimiento económico sostenible, equitativo e inclusivo. Es específicamente para los sindicatos, las personas trabajadoras, ya que recoge el concepto de trabajo decente de la OIT, que incluye los derechos sindicales, libertad de asociación y negociación colectiva. El trabajo decente es un concepto de la política laboral creado por la OIT para indicar que es evidente que la creación del empleo y el crecimiento económico no pueden disociarse de la calidad del empleo. El trabajo decente debe ser productivo y libremente elegido. Debe despertar los derechos sindicales fundamentales en el trabajo, el diálogo social, la igualdad y la no discriminación, la protección social y la seguridad social y salud en el trabajo. Donde una visión sindical, ese objetivo también es fundamental para garantizar el desarrollo económico que no se logre a costa de la violación de derechos de los trabajadores, sino a través de empleos dignos, estabilidad laboral y protección social. El ODS 8 representa una oportunidad para fortalecer los derechos laborales, combatir la precarización en el empleo y reducir la desigualdad en el ámbito laboral. Como representante de los trabajadores y trabajadoras de los gobiernos locales, porque también lo soy, les manifestamos que nosotros también amamos nuestras ciudades, nuestros gobiernos locales y nuestros ciudadanos que son nuestra razón de ser. Somos quienes llevamos los servicios a los ciudadanos, quienes tenemos el contacto directo con ellos. Prestamos ininterrumpidamente los servicios de salud, cuidado, agua, saneamiento, electricidad, transporte, residuos funerarios, de vivienda pública, educación, bomberos y más. Pero hoy, en estos tiempos de resiliencia y resistencia, debemos trabajar junto con ustedes, las autoridades de gobierno locales y los trabajadores por el bien de los ciudadanos. Para lograrlos, los trabajadores deben de estar dotados de un todo en todas sus herramientas. Es fundamental establecer una relación basada en el diálogo social y la cooperación. Nosotros, como personas trabajadoras de gobiernos locales, estamos dispuestos a unirnos y contribuir para que se logren todos los objetivos. La Agenda 2030 establece un marco global para erradicar la pobreza y reducir desigualdades mediante el crecimiento económico equitativo. Dentro de este contexto, el ODS 8 resalta la importancia, haciendo ver que los sindicatos pueden tener una participación activa en la formulación de la brecha salarial de género y discriminación y un modelo económico que priorice el bienestar social. Termino diciendo, para servir a la comunidad, las personas trabajadoras de los gobiernos locales requerimos de derechos laborales, condiciones de trabajo dignas, participación y mucho diálogo con las autoridades municipales. Referente a la encuesta que estamos realizando la ISP junto con la CGLU, nuestro sindicato global, el cual represento la Red Mundial de Trabajadores Mundiales, la Confederación de Trabajadores Municipales de las Américas, que envío un saludo a los representantes de FLACMA, que han estado en mucho contacto con nosotros. Estamos distribuyendo la encuesta que habla la compañera a todos nuestros afiliados. Le dimos tiempo máximo al 28 de febrero para empezar a recopilar la información y que nuestros trabajadores se pronuncien al respecto de este importante OD8. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias Rebeca por tu intervención y por enfatizar la importancia del trabajo decente, de cuidar también a los trabajadores y las trabajadoras públicas. Y muy contenta de estar colaborando en este ejercicio con Public Services International. I switch back to English. I also want to acknowledge, in the framework of these partnerships that I was mentioning before, the role of CMR, the European section, and Platforma, because they have also put research at the core of SDG localization, and they also produce a yearly report. I think this year it's the 8th edition for them. And they use it to get to know better the activities and needs and priorities of their members. And they use it as an advocacy tool towards the national government and towards the EU institutions. Now moving on, why was Rebecca talking about SDG 8? Well, because it's one of the SDGs that are gonna be under review this year at the HLPF. It's gonna be SDGs 3, 5, 8, 14, 17. What does this mean? It means that the HLPF will be the forum for discussion of universal health coverage, of urban health, gender equality, care, feminist leadership. The HLPF will be discussing about marine pollution, fishing communities, partnerships. So I think when we hear this, we all have the same feeling, right? That the HLPF cannot discuss this without us, without local and regional governments. So this is why I encourage you to join these efforts, these advocacy efforts, also these research efforts that we're doing to bring this bottom-up perspective to the high-level political forum this year as stronger as ever, and to contribute to the motto, to the theme that they have this year, which is that we want to advance sustainable, inclusive, science and evidence-based solutions for the 2030 agenda to leave no one behind. So who better than us to make sure that we are not leaving anyone behind, that we're not leaving any territory behind. Having this said, again, I encourage you to join us in this effort. I'm going to pass the floor to my colleague Matteo Fabris from the research department at UCLG, who will tell you how you can get involved, like one of the ways through which you can get involved in this exercise. Matteo.
Well, thank you very much, Anna. And indeed, I'm here to remind you once more how you can participate in this effort towards the HLPF. And the main tool through which you can do so is by joining our efforts in the survey that we are promoting. That's already available. You can find it on the website survey.uclg.org. And my role here is to remind you once more, why is this so important? And it's so important, for instance, for local and regional governments. There's a lot of you here today. And it's important because through this survey and through the outcomes and to the survey being included in our yearly report at the HLPF, you can gain international recognitions for your actions, for your policies, for your implementations that are being successful in your cities, in your territories. And collectively, through the showcase of all these practices, you can really influence the global agenda. We have seen this with past reports. It's really important that you can enter in these global discussions, in global agendas. And finally, and perhaps more importantly for local and regional governments, that you can share and showcase that the true innovation when we're talking about sustainable development is done at the local level, that context-caring and context-dependent policies and actions are done at the local level, and they are done by local and regional governments. So this is very important. But this is not the whole story, because the survey and the outcomes of this survey can also be really important for the GFTF, for the members, for the partners, and also for our UCLG sections. Because, for instance, through the outcomes of the survey, you can showcase your important role in promoting sustainable development at the local level. And you can also with the results of the survey, advocate once more. I know it's been repeated and repeated in these days, and it will be inevitably, but advocate for the inclusion of the local level, seeing all these interesting practices in global discussions. And finally, for partners, for members, and for the section, and this is something really interesting that came up in previous reports, is that the survey can contribute to get to know the needs and the priorities of your constituencies better. And through this, you can also tailor your strategies for the present and the future to your constituencies, to what the local territories need. So I would like to conclude my intervention with a real practicality, but it's necessary. So for this survey, there are two main deadlines. For European Local Governments Association, it will be closing on the 10th of March, and for everyone else on the 1st of April. So please spread the word, mainstream it. Normally we get around 200 answers a year, so we're talking about big numbers, and Anna was mentioning before, we collected already more than 5,000 practices. So we're talking about numbers, but we want to do more. So help us spread the word and really bring this local voices, this co-created knowledge to the global agenda, to the HLPF in July. And fill in the survey, spread the word. Thank you very much.
Matteo, Anna, and Rebecca. And Rebecca, thank you for being with us. Public Service International is part of our members, since we are the employees of the local and regional government public servants. And we will be signing a social dialogue in the coming months with PSI through our presidency and under leadership. Thank you for the briefing on this year's report. We strongly encourage you to answer, to share it, and to bring as much as we can in terms of evidence, because this helps to build our knowledge co-creation. Now allow me to introduce the Assistant Secretary General of this specific file, which is knowledge co-creation, which will introduce cases and ways forward of our cities countdown. So have in mind this, HLPF is this July. We are reviewing the specific SDGs, and the cities countdown will be our mechanism to showcase the high impact initiative on localization from now till 2030. We know that this is many information and timelines, but please have in mind this, and do start having in your agendas that we start the countdown to 2030. So having said this, Jordi, the floor is yours.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Micro? Yes. Thank you very much, Pablo. Merci, Arnaud Gacha, Fabiana Goyeneche. Vous avez la parole, Arnaud Gacha, adjoint à la maire de Paris pour la francophonie, les relations internationales et l'Europe. Vous allez présenter l'initiative Paris, ville de 15 minutes. C'est une des initiatives dans le Local Countdown 2030, le compte à rebours local 2030. Vous avez la parole.
Merci. I will speak in French. Dear mayors, ladies and gentlemen, mes chers maires, mesdames et messieurs. Donc, je vais revenir rapidement sur le concept de la ville de quart d'heure. Beaucoup d'entre vous ont pu rencontrer déjà le professeur Carlos Moreno, qui fait le tour du monde avec ce concept, donc qui avait été, on va dire, popularisé lors de la campagne de 2020 de la maire de Paris, Anne Hidalgo. Elle en avait fait un cheval étendard que nous avons tous porté en tant qu'élus à Paris. Alors, quelle était l'idée? L'idée, c'était à travers de la ville de quart d'heure de changer la façon dont on allait vivre dans la ville. Comment on allait vivre dans la ville, comment on changeait le mode de mobilité. Chacun qui a pu venir à Paris, et je l'espère vous étiez nombreux lors des Jeux Olympiques, ont pu se rendre compte de la transformation de la capitale française, qui est passée de l'utilisation de la voiture comme modèle, puisque Paris avait été construite autour de la voiture, notamment au passé, même
dans Paris pour joindre un point A à un point B, la maire de Paris a dit c'est fini, la voiture ne doit plus devenir l'essentiel du mode de mobilité. Elle a donc développé les pistes cyclables que vous avez pu tous voir dans la capitale, mais également, en plus des pistes cyclables, de rendre aux piétons et aux mobilités douces un certain nombre d'espaces publics. Ça a été la Seine, les berges de Seine, pardon, qui a été rendues. Je parlerai de la Seine après d'ailleurs, qui ont été rendus à la circulation, à la piétonisation et au vélo également, mais également des transformations totales dans Paris, la rue de Rivoli notamment. Et ça découle de la ville du quart d'heure, c'est-à-dire le changement de mobilité. Alors à travers de ça, elle l'a poussé plus loin en disant, mais finalement, comment on redéfinit le rapport du citoyen à l'espace public. Et donc la ville du quart d'heure qui est de rapprocher le citoyen des différents services publics qu'il peut rencontrer pour éviter de devoir se déplacer très loin dans la ville et donc de changer sa façon de se déplacer, de ne plus avoir besoin d'aller, quand on vit dans le 18e, de devoir se rendre dans le 6e ou dans le 14e pour un certain nombre de services. Et donc la ville du quart d'heure participe aussi à cette idée de rapprocher les services publics, de rapprocher les individus entre eux et de créer peut-être plus d'interaction humaine d'ailleurs, puisque l'idée c'est que les gens vivent aussi dans leur quartier et donc de créer aussi du lien social. Un autre élément très important dans le concept de la ville du quart d'heure, j'ai parlé des mobilités, j'ai parlé de la façon dont on vit différemment dans son quartier, c'est aussi un sujet qui est lié à la culture et à l'école, parce qu'à travers la ville du quart d'heure, c'était aussi redéfinir le rapport à la culture en mettant en réseau notamment toute l'offre culturelle qui existe à Paris et simplifier, on va dire, la possibilité pour les habitants des arrondissements de pouvoir avoir accès à l'offre culturelle. De même pour les écoles, en rendant l'accessibilité aux écoles plus simple, on a créé ce qui s'appelle les rues aux écoles. Alors il y a énormément, il y en a plus de 200 aujourd'hui, de rues qui ont été entièrement fermées à la circulation, proches des écoles, pour permettre non seulement de sécuriser l'accès aux écoles pour les enfants, mais plus largement pour permettre de rendre aux habitants un certain nombre d'espaces, et notamment aux enfants, notamment pour jouer. Tous ceux qui ont des enfants savent combien c'est important qu'ils puissent jouer en toute tranquillité. La ville du quart d'heure est également un moyen pour aussi mettre en valeur notre offre sportive aussi. Évidemment, les Jeux Olympiques ont été l'objectif qui a guidé notre action municipale depuis l'année 2020. Et là aussi, la ville du quart d'heure a permis de développer l'offre sportive dans les différents arrondissements de Paris dans cet objectif majeur qui était les Jeux Olympiques et Paralympiques. L'aspect aussi du commerce, ça va avec ce que je vous ai expliqué sur la manière de vivre avec les commerces dans son arrondissement. Alors, il y a certains quartiers qui symbolisent plus que d'autres cette ville du quart d'heure à Paris, notamment le quartier Pigalle. J'en parle parce que je suis élu du 9e arrondissement, donc, mais pas uniquement. En tout cas, c'est un des endroits, pour ceux qui connaissent Paris, pardon, je vais tomber, qui est extrêmement dédié à la ville du quart d'heure. On parle même presque plus de la ville du quart d'heure dans le 9e arrondissement, on est presque la rue des 5 ou 10 minutes. Il y a le quartier du Vaugirard, le quartier des Batignolles ou encore le quartier de Olympiade. Je finirai par deux derniers éléments, si vous permettez, je ne peux pas être trop long. C'est la végétalisation, qui participe évidemment à cette ville du quart d'heure, c'est comment on rend des espaces verts aux habitants. J'ai parlé des rues aux écoles, mais c'est tout ce travail de forêt urbaine. Ceux qui viendront à Paris bientôt pourront admirer la nouvelle forêt urbaine qui est en train de voir le jour sur l'esplanade de l'hôtel de ville, qui va être transformée pour une partie en forêt urbaine. Mais chaque arrondissement en a vu, enfin pas chaque, mais beaucoup d'arrondissements, notamment dans le 14e arrondissement, pardon, derrière la gare Montparnasse. Et puis la Seine, et j'en finirai par là parce que ça a été une révolution que de rendre aux Parisiens la Seine. Ça a été l'objectif fixé dès le départ lors des Jeux Olympiques et Paralympiques, c'était que la Seine devienne un acteur essentiel à nouveau de la capitale. Ça a été le cas lors de la cérémonie d'ouverture que beaucoup d'entre vous ont pu voir, n'est-ce pas, Madame la Présidente de Nouakchott, de la région de Nouakchott, mais également comment les habitants allaient pouvoir se réapproprier cet élément essentiel. Un, pour faire face au dérèglement climatique et aux chaleurs importantes que nous subissons dans la capitale. Donc un investissement massif a été fait par l'État et la ville de Paris pour assainir la Seine et la rendre baignable. La maire de Paris a fait ce premier test en se baignant dans la Seine avant que les Jeux Olympiques et Paralympiques se passent. Vous avez pu voir que l'ensemble des athlètes olympiques et les épreuves dans la Seine ont pu se dérouler. Et bientôt, les Parisiens auront 3 espaces de baignade. C'est une révolution majeure que la réappropriation par les Parisiens de la Seine. C'était le cas au 19e siècle. D'ailleurs, les Parisiens se baignaient dans la Seine. Donc, ils vont retrouver leur Seine. Et la maire de Paris va répondre à un vœu du président et ancien maire de Paris, Jacques Chirac, qui avait promis que les Parisiens se baigneraient dans la Seine. Voilà une chose de faite. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Y ahora doy la palabra a Fabiana Goyeneche, directora de Relaciones Internacionales de Montevideo, y nos explicarás el plan de hábitat y vivienda de tu ciudad. Adelante.
Bueno, muy buenas tardes. Sí, la verdad es que ha sido sumamente interesante toda la jornada y toda la conversación, y creo que la propuesta del CGLU me entusiasma mucho porque se iba a tratar de uno de los programas de la política de tierras y hábitat de Montevideo, y luego y ahora les paso a contar de qué se trata, y tuvimos la idea de expandir un poco para que se entendiera la lógica, sobre todo sistemática y transversal, que tienen estas políticas urbanas y estas políticas de vivienda que impulsa la Intendencia de Montevideo. Por un lado, ya hace muchos años que el gobierno de Montevideo tiene una cartera de tierras, es decir, dispone de suelo urbano público que lo destina a garantizar el acceso a la vivienda de ya sea habitantes en situación de vulnerabilidad, por ejemplo, aquellas personas que viven en asentamientos irregulares, en precarísimas condiciones, y entonces la Intendencia busca realojarlas, por ejemplo, porque están en zonas inundables o en zonas altamente contaminadas, ¿no? Y también se destina suelo público para realizar cooperativas de vivienda, para generar cooperativas de vivienda. Lo interesante de esto, además, es que es una política multinivel, porque se hace en convenio con el Ministerio de Vivienda del Gobierno Nacional. Lo digo porque también hablamos bastante ya de la importancia de la acción multinivel para cumplir con las metas de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible. Es una política que es muy exitosa, tan es así que, de hecho, el próximo Gobierno Nacional está anunciando la intención de expandir esta política, de tener una cartera de tierras en el resto de los departamentos del país. Pero mientras esta política que enorgullece a Montevideo se iba desplegando y se iba implementando, Montevideo tenía y sigue teniendo al día de hoy 2 grandes desafíos. Por un lado, que mucho de este suelo está en zonas alejadas de las centralidades de la ciudad. Entonces, al realizar estos realojos de barrios enteros, de familias enteras, como también al brindar suelo para hacer cooperativas de vivienda, se estaba contribuyendo por la propia política pública a algo que no es beneficioso para la ciudad, que es a seguirla expandiendo territorialmente. Montevideo es una ciudad geográficamente muy expandida y eso trae enormes desafíos, porque entonces no solamente, después de brindar el acceso a la vivienda, hay que asegurar los servicios públicos. Y en no pocas ocasiones eso era un desafío. No es lo mejor poder brindar el acceso a la vivienda donde no se tiene un fácil acceso a la educación pública, a la cultura, a la salud, a buenas líneas de conexión del transporte público, etc. Pero además de esta contribución a la expansión geográfica y territorial de Montevideo, teníamos en simultáneo, sigue habiendo lamentablemente, como en muchas de las ciudades acá presentes, muchas viviendas abandonadas, desperdigadas por la ciudad. Inmuebles que desde hace muchos años, a veces décadas y hasta más, están en total situación de abandono, lo que no solamente está generando mucha infraestructura urbana en desuso y que no se está aprovechando, sino que trae problemas de higiene, de salubridad, de seguridad, ¿no? de precarización de toda la zona que la rodea. Entonces ya ya comienzos de, ya en proceso de la administración pasada se comenzó una política en la que la Intendencia de Montevideo buscó identificar muchos de estos inmuebles, estas fincas abandonadas, ¿no? Después de identificar que estuvieran aparentemente en situación de abandono, se hace un estudio de un diagnóstico para ver si esto efectivamente es así. Básicamente lo que se hace es estudiar la situación tributaria del inmueble, ya que los inmuebles pagan impuestos al gobierno departamental. Eso, entre otras cosas, se identifica si hace muchísimos años que se cumplen con ciertos requisitos que tienen que ver con no pagar impuestos, con no tener servicios públicos ni de electricidad, de agua, etcétera. Y luego de eso, identificando realmente que el inmueble está abandonado, se analiza la situación financiera, es decir, se analiza si el inmueble tiene una deuda patrimonial con el gobierno de Montevideo y el valor de esta. Y en el caso de que exceda cierto monto, que lo que se analiza es que exceda el valor que eventualmente se debería de pagar por ese inmueble, la Intendencia lo que hace es un proceso de expropiación del inmueble, que es una figura legal prevista, naturalmente para cuando hay, por ejemplo, un interés público en adquirir un inmueble o tierras tanto en la ciudad como en el resto del país, solamente que acá en este caso opera una suerte de compensación entre la deuda que el inmueble debía a la Intendencia y lo que la Intendencia le debería pagar, con lo que se facilita financieramente poder tener los recursos para adquirir estos inmuebles. En los primeros inmuebles que se adquirieron se utilizaron para diversas finalidades. Por ejemplo, no solamente viviendas, sino también servicios públicos. Hay uno, por ejemplo, que para mí tiene especial sentimiento de referencia, que se destinó a ser un centro de atención psicosocial para personas en situación de calle. Pero avanzando en esta política y buscando utilizarla para el acceso a la vivienda, se han destinado directamente a brindar a cooperativas de vivienda, se han destinado para hacer realojos y para darle casa-habitación a muchas personas, y sé que creo que me debe quedar medio minuto, pero entonces quiero contar el ejemplo de que al día de hoy había en Montevideo un edificio muy grande que había sido abandonado, de hecho sin haberse terminado de construir, tenía una situación de abandono total y un edificio en el medio de la ciudad, en una zona muy céntrica, a pocas cuadras, a metros prácticamente, incluso del edificio de presidencia. Miren qué simbólico. Y estaba trayendo muchísimos problemas, ¿no? Porque ahí había gente ocupando, se cometían muchos delitos, había unos enormes problemas de higiene. Bueno, ese edificio pasó también por este procedimiento de la política de fincas abandonadas recuperadas por la Intendencia y va a ser entregado para una cooperativa de viviendas, con lo que personas beneficiarias de las políticas públicas de la Intendencia van a tener su acceso a la vivienda en una zona central de la ciudad, contribuyendo a la densificación de la ciudad, que es algo que estamos buscando, y también en una zona que necesitaba recuperarse y acondicionarse, y estas personas incluso desde sus balcones verán hasta el presidente cuando entre a su oficina. Y con eso termino.
Muchas gracias, Fabiana, muchísimas gracias. Como veis todas, cada una de estas dos iniciativas, la de París, la de Montevideo, se centran en un tema muy concreto. La ciudad de 15 minutos, la política de suelo y vivienda de Montevideo y el plan Hábitat en general, pero todas comparten una serie de valores que están consignados en el Local Countdown 2030. Son todas iniciativas catalizadoras y copiables. Os animamos a que las tengáis en cuenta, que las adaptéis a vuestros contextos y que las copiéis. Para llegar al 2030 contamos con la colaboración inestimable de Paisaje Transversal en un ejercicio que se llama retroplanning. John, tú eres el CEO de Paisaje Transversal y nos vas a proponer maneras, metodologías para alinear los esfuerzos de localización en esta carrera hacia el 2030. Tienes la palabra.
Muchas gracias, Jordi. Muchas gracias a CGLU. Como decían, Chip Trick, is good to be back. Bueno, ahora de repente no me has puesto todo el peso del Final Countdown y de lo que no se ha hecho en los últimos 10 años a mí, ¿no? Así, para acelerar la localización de los ODS en el mundo entero. Bueno, bien, he tenido retos mayores en esta vida también. Bueno, yo, sorry, because I rather to speak in Spanish because I think that I will be more accurate in my presentation. Sí que me gustaría iniciar bueno, con un gran acierto que plantea este Final Countdown, ¿no? Final o Countdown 2030, perdón, por las referencias. Soy muy melómano y a veces pues, se me va. Que es poner el foco en los proyectos transformadores. Y tú dices que estos proyectos, ¿no?, van en lo específico, pero abordan lo específico desde una perspectiva transversal, transformadora y lo que se dice, ¿no?, el place-based, ¿no? O sea, basados en un lugar y una política concreta, ¿no? Y ese reside el éxito. Luego, si eso contribuye a uno de ese o a otro, ya lo veremos. Pero tanto la ciudad de los 15 minutos como las políticas de vivienda de Montevideo, que bueno, son dos proyectos que afortunadamente pues, conozco bien, están impactando en múltiples metas y ODS, ¿no? Y creo que en estos 10 años nos hemos fijado demasiado en las metas y los ODS y poco en los proyectos, ¿no? Y es el momento de realmente darle un poco la vuelta a la tortilla para poner el foco en estos proyectos. Y por tanto, el planteamiento, yo creo que el abordaje que se debe hacer, ¿no? Hablabas de copiar. Yo no hablaría tanto de copiar, sino de transferir, ¿no? Que esto es un trabajo. Llevo 10 años trabajando en la colaboración entre ciudades para que transfieran buenas prácticas y aprendan unas de otras, pues que es fundamental, ¿no? Con lo cual, este countdown, desde nuestra perspectiva y nuestra experiencia de trabajo con ciudades y redes de ciudades, se basa como en varios principios, ¿no? El primero sería el compartir y aprender, ¿no? Este compartir y aprender entendiendo que ya sea en Nueva Zelanda, ya sea en Canadá, ya sea en Kenia, ya sea en China o en cualquier otro país, en las ciudades tenemos seguramente muchos problemas comunes, ¿no? Vinculados a la movilidad, vinculados al comercio, vinculados a la vivienda, vinculados a la adaptación y mitigación del cambio climático, etcétera, etcétera, ¿no? A los servicios públicos, ¿no? Y por lo tanto tenemos que generar espacios para compartir esos problemas, ¿no? Y frente a esos problemas comunes generar soluciones compartidas, ¿no? Y a través de ello aprender los unos de los otros. Estoy seguro que desde Montevideo son capaces de aplicar las políticas de la ciudad de los 15 minutos y desde París seguramente también estarían interesados en aplicar las políticas de vivienda de Montevideo, ¿no? Y precisamente en ese compartir y en esa transferencia de buenas prácticas, que no sea una cuestión unidireccional, sino que Montevideo aprenda y proponga mejoras al París de los 15 minutos y viceversa, ¿no? Y yo creo que ahí va a estar también el gran reto, ¿no? Se hablaba de no generar nuevas cosas, sino de escalar, transferir y construir sobre lo ya desarrollado. Por lo tanto, este proceso nos debe permitir también generar esa mejora de las prácticas y de los proyectos que se van a analizar, ¿no? Para precisamente acelerar esa localización de los ODS y de sus metas, ¿no? Y otra cuestión también importante en todo esto, en esta replicabilidad y lo que luego posteriormente puede fijar digamos, el pathway, ¿no? al post-2030, ¿no? Es no solo los proyectos, sino en cómo hacer viables, ¿no? Social, ambiental y económicamente, ¿no? Y aquí tenemos que empezar a trabajar, ¿no? Y se ha mencionado la gobernanza multinivel, la gobernanza ¿no? multiactor, la gobernanza multilateral, pero también otras maneras de abordar esta colaboración y estas alianzas múltiples, ¿no? Es decir, ¿qué pasa con la colaboración público-privada, público ciudadana, público-privada ciudadana, ¿no? En la misión de las 100 ciudades climáticamente neutras de Europa lo han dejado bien claro. La neutralidad climática no solo la pueden pagar los entes públicos, no llega con su dinero. Tiene que ser una colaboración y una aportación y una viabilización de todo esto de manera conjunta. Los ODS han sido atractivos para el sector privado, pero más como estrategia de marketing que como realmente implicar, lo siento, perdonad si digo cosas que no se deben decir, pero me traéis aquí para que diga estas cosas, creo, ¿no, Pablo? Bueno, pues cómo podemos hacer también, digamos, atractivo todo esto, ¿no? Y finalmente, otra cuestión importante que ya la he dicho al principio, ¿no? La integralidad o la transversalidad. Los ODS igual también han fortalecido esa departamentalización de los saberes, ¿no? Lo hemos visto en la diapositiva. Estas transiciones están trabajando de manera más transversal, ¿no? Y eso es, yo creo que también un gran avance en lo conceptual de cómo transversalizar y, en el caso de las ciudades, también cómo romper silos para tejer hilos, ¿no? Esa departamentalización de los proyectos la tenemos que ser capaces de romper para precisamente, desde la integralidad, mejorar el impacto de nuestras políticas y de nuestros proyectos, ¿no? Y finalmente, todo esto no tendría sentido si no hay una estrategia detrás, un hacia dónde caminamos y el cómo son estos proyectos transformadores, ¿no? Y que sobre todo podemos definir metodologías, podemos definir el impacto, podemos ver cómo replicarlos, pero sobre todo también tenemos que fijarnos en lo local, ¿no? O sea, en cómo está afectando todo esto. Y quisiera poner un ejemplo de seguramente cómo estos proyectos están impactando más allá, ¿no? El proyecto, lo comentaba ahora con Pablo, el proyecto de la ciudad de los 15 minutos no solo está impactando en París, está impactando en todo el mundo, ¿no? Hasta el punto de que muchas ciudades están intentando aplicar este proyecto. Y hasta el punto que el otro día, hace exactamente una semana, cuando yo a mis alumnos de la universidad les puse los 17 ODS y les pregunté qué era eso, solo 2 levantaron la mano si sabían decirlo. Cuando les pregunté sobre la ciudad de los 15 minutos, toda la clase sabía lo que era la ciudad de los 15 minutos. Con lo cual, para impactar positivamente, mejorar la calidad de vida de la ciudadanía, necesitamos esos proyectos tangibles que transformen de manera transversal la realidad. Muchas gracias.
Sí, y necesitamos hablar el lenguaje de la gente, porque muchas veces aquí nos entendemos todos y todas, pero la gente en la calle no nos entiende. Entonces, ¿queréis reaccionar a Monsieur Gacha, directora Goyeneche? Sí.
Oui, 2 minutes. Je voulais juste revenir sur ce que vous avez dit sur les sources d'inspiration, parce que je pense que c'est très important. Ça avait été le cas, la maire de Paris le dit souvent, elle s'est inspirée beaucoup de Copenhague, Danemark, dans sa politique du vélo. Et ça a été un élément. Et puis sur le logement, ce matin, j'étais à la mairie de Barcelone, je discutais avec mon homologue. Il y a un grand enjeu du logement à Barcelone. On a tous ces enjeux-là dans les grandes villes, compte tenu de la cherté du mètre carré. Et donc là aussi, c'est des bonnes pratiques qu'on a tous à mener ensemble et à s'inspirer les uns et les autres de la manière dont on va pouvoir garder les classes moyennes dans les grandes villes. C'est un des enjeux majeurs des années à venir. Et je finirai pour dire que la question des ODD, il y a un enjeu essentiel pour la réaliser, c'est celui des financements des villes. Je pense qu'on doit aussi tous se poser la question comment on va pouvoir trouver l'argent pour mener à bien ces transformations écologiques. C'est notamment un des combats politiques que mène la maire de Paris, mais pas que. Notamment ici avec le secrétariat général de l'ONU et un groupe qui travaille mené par Jeffrey Sachs, c'est comment financer cette transition écologique et trouver les fonds nécessaires pour cela. Merci.
Bueno, ¿qué agregar? Por un lado, que definitivamente creo que este aprendizaje mutuo entre las ciudades siempre ha sido algo muy bueno y en este momento es un desafío enorme. Montevideo se ha inspirado mucho en París, en la ciudad de 15 minutos, también, por ejemplo, en las supermanzanas de Barcelona, y esos intercambios creo que son muy buenos porque nosotros siempre decimos, compartimos las buenas prácticas y también las malas prácticas, en el sentido de aprender unas ciudades de otras, y sobre todo porque los grandes desafíos son globales, entonces las soluciones también tienen que serlo. Ese pensamiento colectivo me parece que es fundamental. Y después, nada más que reafirmar, yo te lo voy a decir al estilo uruguayo, ¿para qué me invitan si saben cómo me pongo? Así que me voy a sumar a que sí, definitivamente estas políticas públicas necesitan un financiamiento y estas transformaciones que son no solamente vitales, sino que además son urgentes, tienen que ser financiadas, miren cómo lo voy a decir, con corresponsabilidad público-privada. También por eso, mientras estamos teniendo estas conversaciones, seguimos debatiendo sobre el acceso al financiamiento de las ciudades, sobre la necesidad de mayor autonomía financiera, andan por ahí los bancos de desarrollo, ¿no? Creo que eso son dos conversaciones que no pueden estar separadas si realmente queremos llegar al 2030 con alguna meta más por lo menos cumplida y sobre todo saber que el 2030 no deja de ser una línea arbitraria de tiempo en el sentido de que al otro día de cumplido el 2030 tenemos que seguir pensando cómo transformar las ciudades y la realidad y cómo llevar y cómo evitar caer de nuevo en que hablar tanto de estas transiciones se convierta solamente en palabrerío de encuentros sin participación de la gente, ¿no? Creo que ahí, y con esto termino, en todos estos procesos para que se conviertan en realidad, la participación y la gestión participativa también es fundamental.
Muchas gracias, Fabiana. El mundo no se acaba en el 2030, esto es una certeza. Soluciones existen y hemos escuchado dos magníficas soluciones localizadas y replicables. Y el retiro también continúa. Y le devuelvo la palabra a Pablo Fernández para que continúe esta sesión.
Thank you very much, Jordi and colleagues. And to remind you, for instance, of what the Deputy Mayor of Paris was saying, the 15-minute city has been replicated in more than 300 cities, and this comes from the coalitions that we were talking before through the Global Observatory on Proximities. This will also feed the initiative in a different way from the specific case, but it will be feeding as well. And we also have the Commission of SDSN on Urban Local Finance, chaired by the Mayor of Paris and the Mayor of Rio de Janeiro, as one of the coalitions that will be reporting on financial architecture that it's needed to access the funds as one of the coalitions. So that we know that we are not talking the language that it's accessible to everyone, but at least we hope that this room can understand the processes that we are trying to bring on this. We have 7 to 10 minutes to open the floor. So, colleagues, the floor is open. We have talked about the High Impact Initiative on localization, our city's countdown to feed it, and this year's HLPF report and our survey. So let me know if you have questions, comments, or you want to intervene. Don't be shy. And I see Stephen Weiber from the International Federation of Library Associations, IFLA, and who is actually contributing to one of the coalitions that will be feeding, which is the Culture 2030 campaign goal, a long-standing partner of us. So, Stephen, there's a microphone in the table in front of you. Otherwise, we can give you one of these, but we encourage you to use your microphones and welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I apologize, I will be doing English, not French or Spanish this time. So first of all, thank you for the invitation to contribute to the survey. We'll certainly share that with our members, including around 400,000 public and community libraries worldwide. It's a public library for roughly every 16,000 people around the world, probably actually more. So there's a real infrastructure there to support in your work. I think firstly, I just wanted to salute the work that UCLG is doing. Clearly, you have to count down to 2030. It's poor taste to look like we're giving up on the SDGs, but clearly, I think, as Jordi was saying at the end, we have to look beyond. And a lot of the work that UCLG is doing a great job of showing what's possible. What could an even better suited agenda look like afterwards? How do we define the problems? How do we define solutions in a more effective way? So thank you very much for that. I suppose one of the points I wanted to raise is that amongst the documents that were issued at the time of the Pact for the Future was the Global Principles on Information Integrity. Now, we have plenty of issues with those. I think actually the best thing about them is the title. The rest of it is far too top-down, far too much about just Google, Google, Google. But actually there's a really important message in there that I think also came out in the interventions from Montevideo and Paris about the importance of knowledge, of culture, of education in empowering people. And so I hope one aspect that we can look at is how do we localize that information integrity agenda? How do we make sure that just in the same way as we're empowering city and local governments through knowledge here, we're also empowering people within communities to be able to seize opportunities, to take their own decisions, to innovate, to learn, to progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And for instance, this is where we are connecting the dots, because libraries are an integral part of the 15-minute city and also of the housing and the closeness of housing to these places of accessing information. Let me know if you want to react immediately, and then we can take more questions and comments. So I have Andras from the Global Cities Hub, and then I'm going to this side of the room. Andras, the floor is yours.
And thank you for all these insightful presentations and the discussion. I would like to come back to the point you mentioned and we heard about the SDSN. I think UCLG is doing a great job, as you mentioned, on one hand to communicate among peers, but also to bring this message to the level of international organizations more and more. And SDSN and the work on the Green Cities Guarantee Fund, for me, is a very good example how the local level can think about, realize, and then propose a solution for an issue which we start to talk more and more about. Is financing the localization of SDGs, because that's great that at the level of the UN, member states realize that we need to localize the SDGs. Now is the time to make it happen through financing the localization of the SDGs. And I think the initiative was picked up by the Latin American Development Bank. I'm absolutely convinced that with some advocacy work, we could replicate it in other parts of the world. And I think that's where UCLG could play an enormous role to show this good example, as you showed the good example of the 15-minute city. So we should just replicate your recipe and put our finger on this very important issue, which I think is perhaps even more important than just the decision to localize the SDGs, financing the localization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andras. And yes, we will be organizing together with SDSN during the Finance for Development Conference a session dedicated to projects and access to funds. Because yes, projects, and this is something that John has encouraged always, they have to be realistic, and in order to transfer them, we need to find the solutions of how we're bringing, for instance, the carrying blocks from Bogota to Freetown in a different type of ecosystem, and the bankability in Africa is different from the capacity that Bogota has. So yes, totally agree. I'm going here. Please introduce yourselves, and I will have two more, and then we will wrap up with Emilia, so that I have Natalia, and then we go. So please. And patience with your micros, because they have to find you through the cameras.
Hi. Testing? No? Okay, perfect. So, hi. Afternoon, everyone. I'm Rodrigo from Brazil, the Brazilian Association of Municipalities. I'm talking from a different perspective, I guess. We have been talking a little bit about how can we finance, where is the funding from the SDGs, but what we have been witnessing in Brazil is not exactly gathering more funds for the SDG, but in some way mainstreaming the SDGs in what is currently available as finance instruments. And we have just got out last week from a national meeting of mayors in Brazil. We had about 3,000 mayors there, and we had some sessions, including Sebastian from UN Habitat was in one of these sessions. And what was striking to us is that awareness raising is still a big issue in the Global South about the SDGs. The agenda doesn't make sense for a lot of the Brazilian mayors yet. And I'm talking just about some small rural towns in the countryside of Brazil. I'm talking even about some capitals and some large cities that still don't understand how the SDGs can sometimes help them in their planning. And so last year, ABM was invited by UCLG to do a VSR, a voluntary subnational review. And we have interviewed about 100 and something cities. That can be a big number, but it represents less than 5% of Brazil municipalities. And what we have saw is that cities and mayors still think that the SDGs are not on the political agenda. They feel that neither the national government nor the international community still pushes it ambitiously enough for that to be part of the agenda. So what I put like as a provocation for our conversation here is how can we do that on the time that we have available? How can we put SDGs even more on the focus of the conversations? Because when I go to some cities that are like already part of the agenda, they are aware of the agenda, they see that they can frame their planning around the SDGs. But how can we put in some way that the national governments can put like as a priority in a way?
Thank you. And yes, we were in that session. Actually, the co-president of UCLG sitting on your table and mayor of Cobija was representing our presidency. We hope that Cities Countdown can inspire not only Brazilian municipalities, but worldwide municipalities. And it's also the retro planning is a way of saying that we are already localizing the 6 transitions, even though we haven't mainstreamed exactly the targets, as John was saying. And we will not try to put the focus on the targets themselves, but on projects. And we do think that projects are political. And they have the political capacity to both transform lives, but to have the citizens identify with their day-to-day lives because they are changing their life. So this is kind of the approach that we are trying to bring, and we have time, we have 2 years. So I hope we can answer these questions, and I'm sure that Emilia in her wrap-up will be able to give a bit of more inspiration. Natalia from Regions 4, you have the floor.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for the very clear and concrete stories from the cities. I thought that was really interesting. Also, the inspiration from one another. I wanted to join the conversation on behalf of Regions and share with you that we also launched at the Summit of the Future Regions for SDGs, which is an initiative that Regions 4, together with UN Habitat. And what we want to do is precisely to build on the wealth of experiences that we have been learning from regions from these last years, since 2015. So, for example, Wales embedded Agenda 2030 in their legislation as far as 2015, and they've been doing very pioneering work around future generations and incorporating that in the Agenda 2030. We see how Sao Paulo is aligning their state budget to the Agenda 2030, or the Basque Country empowering all the municipalities of the region and yearly reporting and voluntary reviews to the UN. We have a lot of examples, and we wanted to build a consistent framework with a governance framework, set of tools, good practices, examples, but also building projects and accessing technical and financial support. So we're quite aligned in what you're talking about. And on one hand, to help turbocharge, in words of the UN Secretary General, action from now to 2030, but on the other hand, to help us build the case of why it's relevant, why it's important to invest at the regional level or the city level, at the national level, why and to be able to really condense it in terms of the impact, qualitative and quantitative, as you were mentioning earlier. So I think that here we are well aligned. Do count on us. Do count on us as part of your efforts. Let's go together to HLPF, to the SDG Summit, and to the discussions of the Post-2030, building on these frameworks and the work that we're presenting here today, so that we can really make a difference and be better positioned for what comes next, and which would mean also having better access to resources and to finance.
Thank you very much, Natalia. And as you saw in Sebastian's presentation on Local 2030, the Global Task Force will also be feeding the initiative, and this is where Regions for SDGs, which was acknowledged in the Local SDG Rescue Plan, will be able to contribute as our organized constituencies' inputs. The Deputy Mayor of Paris requested the floor, so I'm giving it to him, and then we will wrap up almost 1 hour sharp this session.
Oui, je vais être très rapide. Je voulais juste répondre à ce que vous avez dit concernant la sensibilisation. Elle passe par le combat politique avant tout. Hein. Nous étions à Rio avec la maire de Paris pour le Urban 20. Eduardo Paes avait réuni notamment beaucoup de ses homologues. Il est en pointe sur ce dossier-là. Nous avons rencontré le président Lula aussi. Et la COP Belém va être un grand moment diplomatique pour le Brésil. Et c'est là qu'il faudra porter le combat politique. Et je dis à tous les maires ici présents dans la salle, il vous appartient de mener ce combat politique. C'est vous qui avez le pouvoir démocratique de le mener. Donc je vous invite à le prendre.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. And having said this, Emilia, I'm yielding you the floor to wrap up this session and to later go to a break.
Well, thank you very much, Pablo, and thank you everyone for contributing to these discussions on the local countdown 2030. I would like to pick up where the Vice Mayor of Paris has left it. This is a political combat. This is a political fight. This is about showing we are political actors and not any other actor, that we are in a sphere of government that understands the agenda in a certain way. So from my perspective, and I hope this resonates with all of you, and if it doesn't, then we will need to change something. The local countdown needs to become an instrument, one, to make sure that we provide the information from our own perspective and not from any other person's perspective. It is very critical that we document our story from our perspective, because we are trying to feed into all these other indicators that are not meant for us, they were not defined by us, and so they don't tell our story. And I am convinced that because that is the case, we are not able to reach some parts of our membership, and they don't see the SDGs as their own agenda. And I know, I look at the political leadership, and some of them just tell me very openly, and we were joking about this with the president of ECOSOC last week in New York. I mean, some of the political leaders know the SDGs very well by heart. They know what it means for them with their national governments, but they cannot go to their neighborhoods and speak about SDGs because people see this as an agenda from someone very far away. And I think the way that we are trying to work through the local content and contribution to the high impact initiative is by telling our story from our own perspective. So that is one. The second issue is I think there is nothing wrong with PR, frankly. And so if it worked for private sector, I want it to work for public sector as well. There's nothing wrong with it. But it needs to have content. And it needs to be meaningful for people. And people need to understand how meaningful this is. And the only way to make sure that we demonstrate how meaningful it is by making the connections through sectors. Throughout sectors. And so I guess that when we talk about the mainstreaming of localization, I think we need to make the best use possible of it, like we have tried to do with equality. There is some piece that we are missing there by not using the characteristics of our local action when talking to national governments in the production of the voluntary national reviews, and by addressing national policies in general without talking about localization and the links with the global agendas. And hopefully the local countdown is this instrument that we can all use beyond UCLG, the global task force member, to actually show how deep localization can run. It needs to be that kind of creative instrument that goes beyond learning from each other. I think learning from each other is a very good feature, but I think it needs to help us document more and in the ways and the very heavy responsibility that we have put on you, John, from Paisaje Transversal. I think this is something that is extremely important. We have some success stories. I think that the progress that we've made with the understanding of culture as a very critical piece of development is a success story that we need to apply to the rest of the SDGs and the local countdown. And one final comment that I hope will come up, I think it's on Thursday, yes, when we talk about the new social contract. From the examples that I have heard, the 15-minute city, the housing experience of Montevideo, what I hope the local countdown can demonstrate is that there is no way that you can tackle one single topic alone, but that is a very good place to start. It doesn't mean you need to do it all at the same time. And hopefully, when we look at the local social covenant, our basis for the new social contract on Thursday, we can materialize, or we can define in a more pragmatic way how we are going to do that with partners, with civil society, with the partners that need to be there for the long run. A final point of thinking how can we bring this into our general work program. I think it will be impossible to bring this to a meaningful part of our work program if we don't emphasize the importance of the local countdown facilitating equality, anti-racism, and human rights. We need to make sure that that happens. If we don't manage that, we might lose the battle that we need to have, that political battle that you were talking about, and that will have a very, very important diplomatic component this year. Beyond Belém, the social summit in Doha. So I hope that our members and our partners can identify with that, and if we don't, then let us rethink how we need to shape the alliance around the local countdown. I think it's a very important instrument to succeed. And thank you very much for making this conversation possible. Thank you, Pablo.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Jordi. As we have said, work in progress, we have time, but we will be doing this from now till 2030. Please share our survey. We need to bring our cases to the HLPF. We're having a lunch break, and we'll see you in about 7 minutes for the next session. It's just coffee, enjoy each other, but we'll be back in this same room. Thank you.
You can hear me. Hello, everyone. I still didn't had the opportunity to give my greetings to everyone. Are we still there? Who is still there? I want to hear. Who is still there? Come on. Well, a little bit. That's what's not enough, but I hope next time will be more joyful. Okay, so it is a hard time. It is like the afternoon session, but we are turning the room into a think tank room. So please stay with us and enjoy the co-creation exercise we will be having right now. This session is called Laying the Ground for the Post-2030 Agenda. Simply because you have seen the whole day today, you saw that we have been monitoring a little bit the advancement of the SDGs, of the 2030 Agenda. We have been talking with youth. We will be, again, talking with youth tomorrow in an intergenerational dialogue. But this afternoon, after thinking mechanisms of implementing better, accelerating, bringing further the SDGs, we need now to think, and what are these emergent pressing issues and challenges that are coming to us that will make us think and define a post-2030 agenda, a universal agenda after 2030. So this is the exercise we will be doing now, and we have here a fantastic, I mean, the whole room is invited to interact. We will be beginning with a core component of mayors. We have here Mayor Sefiani, President of the UCLG Forum of Intermediary Cities, Special Envoy for Food Security as well. We have Ana Lucia Reis, a Mayor of Cobija, President of Flagma, and also co-presidents of UCLG, so different scales of thinking and policy making. And we have here the deputy of the city of Grigny, Scheherazade, that is now leading the work on the Commission on Human Rights and Local Democracy. So we believe that all of these, we have been talking today around local democracy, how Emilia was saying in its recap points of the last session, how democracy and local democracy will be saving or not the situation and the global sustainability. And it is a political will. So this is what we are here for. And behind we have, in this fishbowl exercise we will be doing, we have partners of the local government. We have here Johanna Granados, representing the GECOM, Global Covenant of Mayors. We have Nehmat Kaur, that you have heard yesterday, representing the Under 2 and the Climate Group. We have Sasha Alexander, representing UNCCD, the UN Agency for Combating Desertification, Land Degradation and Drought, a new partner of the Global Task Force. And we have here another partner of the local government that is a national government. We have here the presidency of Brazil represented. So please measure with us. And then a third round where we will be having also Rodrigo Fur from ABM, the Brazilian Association of Municipalities, and he will be also talking under the perspective of the BRICS cities that Brazil and the ABM will be presiding this year. We have Steele Weiler from, you heard him earlier, from the International Federation of Libraries. And we have as well Natalia Uribe, Secretary General of Regions 4, and one that you have heard a lot as well. That is Yunus Arikan with us. And those will be the third round after listening to everything happening in the inner circles. And afterwards, of course, we have the room. All of you are part of this think tank. So please listen to everything that will be said here, because your questions will be answered here as well by the partners and the local government constituency. So in this fishbowl, we need to think, how are we bringing the big problematic? And what is the problematic that we are bringing to the table from UCLG and from the Global Task Force? Colleagues, please, if we can have the slide put on. Have a look at this. This is a scheme that is from the IPCC. And they are proposing different scenarios on the global warming and how the planet will be or not reversible, and how can we really stop to the 1.5 degrees in the hits that the planet is knowing. And if we go further, what is the only scenario that the planet can allow itself and all of us as well. We believe that this is the key problematic that we need to address, because in all of this, local life is being impacted. Local life of your territories and in the regions as well. So this scheme is telling us that actually limiting the global warming to 1.5, somehow the experts are saying that we are nearly there to the 1.5, and going further will be complicated. But they allow another scenario where we have an overshot and a return to 1.5. Well, looking at how we have done it as a global community up until now, this scenario is like a non-scenario maybe, because we did not do it quite well up until now as a global community, and the decision makers neither. So we are bringing this problematic to think how the local life and how the cities and the territories should be thought with new parameters or with adapted parameters for the post-2030 agenda. It is a piece of problematic. Please, next one, colleagues. From UCLG, and this is what Emilia was saying this morning, we are working within the LGMA, the Local Government and Municipal Authorities Constituency Working Group on the loss and damage. And we are, from the group, we are proposing the loss and damage as an agenda for universal justice for development. Social climate justice, justice for development. What kind of development do we want? Are we still talking about development in the geopolitical context that we have? Are we more talking about just saving our our heads? What are we talking about with what we are hearing every day on TV and on the news? So what we have worked on with all the team of UCLG is how to identify the impact areas of this loss and damage, where the effect of climate change will be touching more the local life. And we have identified these 6 areas with inclusive, accessible urbanization, gender and equality, food systems, and I'm putting only some under agendas because we have also oceans and we have many of them, but if we put them all, we will not be able to keep it. Human rights, local democracy, migration, human mobility, culture, identity, and also of course land, biodiversity, land degradation, nature, drought, etc. So the exercise that we are proposing today, please next one, colleagues, is how to think in a double parameter. What have been the thresholds that up until now have impacted the 2030 agenda's implementation, that we are talking about rescuing and we still have only 5 years, etc. But also find the parameters that can re-inspire hope and trust in ourselves, because we are where we are. And I think that local democracy is playing a big role into that, and trust as well, to delve into the conversation we are having today. So this is the proposal for this exercise. All of you are invited, and I would like to begin, please, 2-3 minutes, a statement and a question to the partners, to the room, or a question that should be asked today for this problematic. I would like to begin by Scheherazade from Grigny. Tell us.
Hello everyone, hola, I'm sorry, I will continue in French. Donc j'interviens aujourd'hui pour la ville de Grigny, qui se situe à environ 40 minutes en transport de Paris. Et c'est l'une des villes les plus pauvres de France. Et en France, justement, il y a un peu cette culture de... On dit que les personnes qui sont écolos sont bobos, et c'est un peu péjoratif, c'est-à-dire que ce sont des personnes qui sont... qui ont le privilège de mener un mode de vie écologique. Et justement, en fait, je suis ici aujourd'hui pour parler de la possibilité de faire des choses écologiques sans que ce soit forcément extrêmement cher et que ça puisse aussi bénéficier aux personnes les plus précaires. Voilà, donc la principale question pour moi, c'est est-ce qu'on peut justement lier la justice sociale à la justice climatique?
Super. Super. Merci beaucoup, Grigny. First statement. Mayor Sofiani, how would you address the problematic? What would be your statement and key question?
Merci beaucoup, Firdaus. Je crois que c'est un sujet très, très important. Et puis, je pense qu'il est temps de poser un certain nombre de questions. Et je me rappelle, il y a à peu près un mois, on était à Cuenca lors de la 3e édition du Forum mondial des villes intermédiaires. Il y avait des débats dans ce sens-là. Et je crois que la question, comme l'a dit Emilia, la question de renforcement de la démocratie locale, il est hyper important. Et c'est pour cela que nous avions choisi à Cuenca, lors de ce forum, la question de la participation citoyenne, la citoyenneté, pour renforcer cette démocratie locale qui est très, très importante pour faire face aux différents défis qu'il y a, bien sûr. Et là, je pourrais parler des défis. Je ne sais pas si je peux continuer, non? C'est bon?
30 secondes, vas-y.
OK. C'est les défis importants, tout ce qui est changement climatique, et nous sommes à quelques mois de Belém. Et puis, tout ce qui est préservation de nos biens communs, et notamment la sécurité alimentaire, et notamment la question de l'eau, qui est cruciale, qui a été abordée, et bien sûr d'autres sujets que je continuerai ultérieurement.
La prochaine. Très bien, merci, Monsieur Sofiani. Alcaldesa, usted viene de una región indígena y ha estado acompañándonos a través de las COPs del año pasado. Y estuvo también en el evento de Brasil sobre el desarrollo con los alcaldes y prefectos la semana pasada. ¿Cómo plantearía usted el panorama? Un breve posicionamiento sobre esta pregunta y una pregunta suya. La pregunta es, ¿cómo vería usted los parámetros claves para pensar la próxima agenda después de la 2030?
Muy bien, bueno, muy buenas tardes a todos. Felicidades por este excelente evento a CGLU. Gracias también a todos por la participación y por la invitación. La verdad es que es importante esta participación que tenemos en diferentes actividades, justamente con los gobiernos locales, ¿no? Vemos de que los problemas, ya sean gobiernos locales de países muy pobres o gobiernos locales de países ricos, todos estamos viviendo lo mismo. Todos estamos pasando por este serio problema que es el cambio climático. todos vivimos un masivo ataque hacia el medio ambiente y en realidad cada día buscamos cómo podemos disminuir, cómo podemos mejorar los problemas, pero al mismo tiempo también dentro de nuestra misma región vemos que cada día aumenta también la gente que sí quiere continuar con este ataque. Quiero dar un ejemplo muy rápido. Yo vengo de la Amazonía boliviana. Como dice, venimos de un país con el 70% de la población son pueblos indígenas, con una cultura milenar, con muchas costumbres, ¿no? Pero también hay actividades que hoy en día involucran mucho dinero. Y el dinero es lo que en realidad te lleva a otra dirección. Quiero darte un ejemplo. Se ha declarado en Bolivia una pausa ecológica debido a la grande contaminación ambiental. Lo que normalmente vivimos, un 4 o 5% de contaminación en el aire, hemos vivido en octubre del año pasado, llegamos a 587. ¿No? Quiere decir más de 580 prácticamente arriba de lo normal. Se hace una pausa ecológica para que no se queme, porque hay quema que se hace con autorización, ¿no? del gobierno y hay quemas que se hacen accidentes, etcétera, ¿no? Entonces se hace la pausa para que no haya quema y al mismo tiempo campesinos que viven y dependen del bosque hacen una grande bloqueo para que el gobierno pueda sacar esa pausa. Entonces vives del bosque, pero lo quieres destruir el bosque. ¿Y por qué eso? Porque se involucran los poderes, ganaderías, etcétera, ¿no? Entonces, por eso le digo, vivimos problemas similares, diferentes tipos, claro, de bosque, de ríos, pero al final llegamos a la contaminación, llegamos a la destrucción. Los gobiernos locales somos los que realmente vivimos el problema diariamente y somos los que asumimos una responsabilidad muy grande que el gobierno central te da la responsabilidad, pero no te da las condiciones, ¿no? Y para mí una pregunta importante es cómo realmente podemos llegar a los gobiernos locales, cómo podemos hacer inversiones que realmente los gobiernos locales estén involucrados, porque nosotros somos los que vivimos el problema en el día a día, los alcaldes, no importa, como les digo, si somos países pobres o ricos, tenemos el mismo tipo de problemas, responsabilidades, cómo realmente podemos trabajar de una manera que lleguemos más directo al gobierno local.
Fantástico, muchísimas gracias. Me quedo entonces con esta pregunta que acaba de hacer la copresidenta. Me quedo con la pregunta de Sherazad diciendo cómo podemos realmente materializar el juntar justicia climática con justicia social. Y me quedo con la pregunta del alcalde Sefiani de cómo mantener los sistemas de vida, el agua, la comida, la seguridad alimenticia, etcétera, etcétera. Vamos a pasar al otro round. Jean-Baptiste, estamos a París más 10 y ya están hablando de Belém más 10, porque el París más 10 se hace el año de Belém. Te paso el second round, in your hands.
Thanks a lot, Firdaus and colleagues. We have a very interesting setting here because we have 3 different continents from cities, and we have our key partners, national governments, UN agencies, and also a bunch of networks in this center. So, from what we've just listened to here, we were also connected with what we were saying in the morning, what actually Emilia was saying with the three key topics: equality, trust, and the political visioning. So with this in mind and the topics of social, climate, justice, burning issues that we just heard from the territories, I would like to turn now to the UN Convention to Combat Desertification. We were just 2 months ago together in Riyadh to host a big local and regional governments summits. There were cooperations before, but this one, I think, has leveled up very much the conversation. How do you see this from your side? Which parameters are you thinking in the long run, taking into account what the priorities are from the territories, from the bottom up?
Thank you. So first, the UNCCD, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, is one of the least known Rio conventions. But our objective and our focus is very much of priority, particularly for local and regional governments. Sustainable land and water management, we are mandated to assist countries with those management practices and for the benefit of local communities. And so all the discussion here is not necessarily focused on the land. However, the land can connect to all the issues, human health issues, migration, governance issues, food security issues. And so our priority, and by having an active stakeholder group, such as the local authorities, we think that we can further catalyze exchanges with our primary national level member states and so forth. But I think some of the things that there may be some very concrete entry points for us and for the group here and the networks and all the tentacles that UCLG has propagated. And those are contained in our decisions. So we have a decision on migration, for example, where we look at urban-rural linkages. We're working with UN Habitat to see what are the practical applications of strengthening urban-rural linkages for a more resilient and more sustainable society. But water, drought, is very much, I mean, actually the title of our convention includes drought. So we have a long title. But those countries affected by drought and our role in mitigating the impacts of drought. So we see a lot of cities taking action in the watershed surrounding, I mean, New York, and we have Quito, and we have other cities around the world that are doing that. And so these are issues that can be broadened and made more integrated with other management practices that look at nature-based solutions. So these are really important things. So we have a number of processes that I think would be very good fit for this stakeholder group. And I don't know if I should wait now or maybe go in a little bit later. Yeah, so I'll stop here. Thanks.
Thank you, Sasha. I think that's a good transition to hear about one of the national governments that is in the room that actually is playing a key role this year, but also had a key role last year, hosting the G20, but this year hosting COP30 in Belém. You are at the core of the sustainability agenda this year and these past years, and also hosting COP30 in the heart of the Amazonas. So my question to you is, from a central government perspective, what are your parameters towards local and regional governments, and how are you looking at the priorities this year, but also more forward-thinking in the post-2030?
Bueno, muchas gracias. Buenas tardes a todas, a todos. Fidel, Emilia, Fernando, muchas gracias por la invitación una vez más, estar aquí. Y como dice el presidente Lula, necesitamos escuchar, escuchar y escuchar cuando trabajamos con políticas públicas y además cuando estamos en el lugar de los gobiernos locales, ¿no? Entonces, pero puedo hablar un poquito de eso porque trabajé también antes de estar en el gobierno central y en el gobierno local en la ciudad de São Paulo, y también muy joven con mi ciudad en el interior del estado de Ceará, que queda en el nordeste del país y que está sufriendo mucho con las sequías, ahora con un clima semidesértico para desértico. Entonces, en la piel sentimos, yo y mi familia también, los cambios climáticos. Y cuando llevamos eso para el gobierno nacional, es que de alguna forma la agenda de justicia climática está muy involucrada con la agenda de justicia social, porque eso es una base también de un programa de un gobierno que volvió al poder, ¿no?, en 2023, del presidente Lula, que trajo en su carta de propuestas esta agenda en todos sus niveles. Entonces, la agenda climática en Brasil tiene que pasar por la agenda social, la agenda de la desigualdad social, de la disminución de la desigualdad social. O sea, no se puede hablar en Brasil de la agenda de justicia climática sin hablar del combate de disminuir la desigualdad social. Entonces, eso está pasando por todos los niveles del gobierno y también para los niveles de la federación, ¿no? Aquí también está Rodrigo, de la Asociación Brasileña de Municipios, que sabe muy bien que trabajamos juntos con eso, como que los entes federativos, municipales, estaduales y el gobierno federal están en sintonía para eso. O de alguna manera intentan todos los días, ¿no? Porque también no es un trabajo fácil. Aquí, estados que son federación saben muy bien cómo es el trabajo día a día de trabajar en acuerdos y diálogos de la federación. Entonces, lo que pasamos, o sea, lo que paso, yo y mi familia, en el interior de Ceará, con el tema de la ciudad chica, que hay un objeto que es lo más buscado hoy, que es el aire acondicionado en el interior de Ceará. Y la gente que no tiene plata, no tiene aire acondicionado y queda en el calor todos los días trabajando. Y la gente que tiene plata compra el aire acondicionado. Y hay una división social entre la gente que tiene aire acondicionado y la gente que no tiene aire acondicionado. Eso está pasando de 8 años aquí, la diferencia social entre esas personas. Y eso está pasando en todo el Brasil, ¿no? Y de alguna forma la gente que puede salir de una periferia e ir más al centro o a un barrio planeado por el tema de los cambios climáticos. Eso está frente a nosotros. Y una diferencia social con tema de trabajo y de niveles de presupuesto que la gente gana, que se puede alquilar o no. Entonces eso es transversal. Eso se está trabajando en los ODS en Brasil. Nuestro informe que fue publicado el año pasado, ¿no? en la ONU, en el ámbito de la ONU y también en Brasil, los índices volvimos a 2015 por la pandemia y también por políticas mal implementadas en Brasil. Volvimos a los índices de 2015. Todos los índices están muy mal. Y hay un intento con el diálogo federativo, con los entes subnacionales, para que esos índices mejoren con el tiempo y que tengamos una implementación y una división de responsabilidades. Eso es muy importante. La división de las responsabilidades de las entidades federativas. Cada uno tiene que saber cuál es su responsabilidad en esa agenda de justicia social con justicia climática. Eso por ahora. Gracias.
Thank you for this clear division of responsibilities and tasks. Climate federalism, we heard also this before today. I would suggest we move to the global perspective, but from some of the networks that are highly involved in the climate action. I would start with one of our new members of the family of the Global Task Force, the Under 2 part of the climate group. Neymat Kor, you are with us today. You were sharing a few perspectives yesterday already, but from this social climate justice perspective and thinking in long term, what are the 2 or 3 levels parameters you're looking at from your coalition?
So first of all, I just wanted to say I love the format of this session, so thank you for including me in this. We've just heard from the multilateral perspective, then from the national government perspective, and if you go down one level, I represent states, regions, governors, provinces from around the world. So we're the connective tissue where national strategies kind of flow into the city level. So I'm going to speak from that kind of perspective where states, regions, and provinces can aggregate and be that connective tissue. So I also feel like today is a day of keywords. We started with the quiz or sort of the survey in the morning, which was kind of what are the keywords post-2030? And some of the things that you just said, the 3 keywords we need to keep in mind are equity, inclusivity, and trust. I think and equality. And I would like to add 3 keywords to that to think about kind of future parameters post-2030. For me, those keywords are readiness. So future readiness post-2030, investment readiness, advancement readiness, sort of all of the kind of concepts around readiness. The second thing I would say is security. So being kind of secure with indigenous communities, vulnerable communities, energy secure, food secure, climate secure, and sort of building security at the local level. And the third thing I would say is self-sufficiency. So I would also kind of build towards that. I think there's immense power in local government, and it sometimes falls on networks like ourselves to kind of show mayors that they are powerful within themselves, show governors within themselves that they are supremely powerful. So self-sufficiency, but that doesn't mean they're alone. That doesn't mean operate in isolation. There's definitely need for multi-stakeholder collaboration, multi-level action, and that's where the regions come in and can help kind of create those connections, but definitely build local level self-sufficiency to drive post-2030. We've seen around the world, foreign aid is drying up, countries are kind of considering decisions that will have impact on vulnerable communities, so self-sufficiency. So I would add those 3 keywords to kind of take forward. Yeah.
Amazing. Equal, safe, and self-sufficient. We have another alliance with us today, the GCOM, the Global Covenant of Mayors, also driving a lot of data. You are one of those big data center on local climate action, mitigation, adaptation, and beyond. So you have access to a lot, you know a lot about what's happening worldwide. What are you thinking from what you just heard from the mayors, from the different actors, thinking about those parameters towards post-2030?
Thank you, and thanks for the invitation and for inviting us to reflect around hope and how we think about the future, because I think that's a very relevant question in this moment in time. So I think that there are several parameters. We can talk about data. We need to keep being driven by data, but we need to go one step further and bring the evidence also, highlighting what is really changing in those communities that we've heard about, what's happening in the Amazonian cities, what's happening in Morocco, what's happening in the different places, where all the actions that we as local governments are driving are really going down and transforming the lives of our communities. So I think that we need to elevate the voices and the examples and the evidence of what is really happening. And we need to do that facing the future that awaits, which is different because the scenario is changing. And we need to also adapt to that. We need to rethink how are we positioning as local governments and as the power of those local voices raising up to the global conversation. So we need to be also aware of information. Where is information coming from? How can we trust the information that we're seeing? What's the changes? What are the changes that are coming from AI and all the things? And we were just talking about that earlier. But I also think that we need to keep the line for action. Of course, climate action. I think that we all agree that we need to be driven to that and achieve that and pursue that. But we need an inclusive climate action. We need social justice, and we need that when we have more finance in a better way, in a tailored way for the local governments, and that also comes with a bigger reform of the system that is financing local climate action.
Thank you, Jean-Baptiste. Thank you, colleagues. Pretty intense and consistent. Thank you, for each one of you, for your reactions. I would like to come back after listening to the partners. How do you see? Did you find some answer, or you would like to delve more, to enter more some key issues? Did they answer a little bit your questions, Mayor Safiani?
Oui, je dirais il y avait quelques éléments de réponse, mais il y a toujours des questionnements. Il y a toujours des questionnements. Et si, par exemple, un des thèmes qui a été soulevé, la question de l'eau, je prends l'exemple du Maroc, par exemple. Nous avons 7 ans consécutifs de sécheresse continue. et maintenant toute une stratégie, toute une priorité au niveau national et bien sûr au niveau régional et local, des efforts pour la question de l'eau parce que nous vivons une sécheresse aiguë, aussi bien pour l'eau potable et aussi bien pour l'agriculture et la sécurité alimentaire. Ça, c'est hyper important. Et j'étais à Riyad il y a 2 mois. Cette question de sécheresse qui est traitée au niveau des Nations Unies, c'est très important. Mais là, je reviens à la question de la finance et de l'implémentation. On ne peut pas imaginer un nouveau agenda s'il n'y a pas des mécanismes clairs d'implémentation. Mécanismes clairs d'implémentation, et là, nous, en termes de gouvernements locaux et régionaux, nous avons besoin d'une assistance technique et rapprochée, et surtout le Global South. Et ça doit être clair au niveau du nouvel agenda, post-2030. Et puis, l'accès à la finance, qu'on soit clair, on n'est pas bon du tout au niveau monde. L'accès au niveau local. Et là, il y a des chiffres. Et là, je reviens aussi à la question de cette justice climatique et des pertes et dommages. Je crois qu'il est temps, et ça, tout le monde milite pour ça, au niveau CGLU, au niveau d'ICLE, au niveau de GECOM et d'autres partenaires, pour rendre l'accès à la finance climat plus soutenable et surtout la partie adaptation-résiliation. La partie adaptation-résiliation qui est très très importante, et je crois que les désastres que nous sommes en train de vivre, nous avons vu ce qui s'est passé à Valencia et d'autres régions du monde, et ce qui se passe dans nos pays. Je crois qu'il est temps d'avoir plus clair cette question de justice climatique et d'octroyer les moyens en termes d'assistance technique et de financement pour l'implémentation de l'agenda.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le maire. Sherazade, j'adore votre nom. il fait rêver. Mais est-ce que ce que vous avez entendu vous a remonté l'espoir? Est-ce que vous avez trouvé des bribes de réponse? Et sinon, quelle serait la question suivante?
Merci. Alors, c'est très intéressant parce que vous parliez de la question de Francesco, justement du lien entre la justice climatique et la justice sociale. Donc ça me rappelle Grigny avec l'exemple de la géothermie. Et j'ai un autre exemple aussi qui est celui de l'eau, comme vous en parliez. Parce qu'en fait, à Grigny, on a un jumelage avec un camp de réfugiés palestiniens près de Bethléem qui s'appelle le camp de réfugiés d'Aïda. Et justement, on est en train de travailler là-dessus sur la question de l'eau pour justement faire en sorte qu'ils aient un meilleur accès à l'eau potable. Voilà, donc je pourrais peut-être en parler après, mais on a quelques solutions à Grigny. Donc de la solidarité entre gouvernements locaux.
C'est une des bases, c'était une des bases sur lesquelles on est arrivé avec la stratégie des pertes et dommages. Et puis on s'est dit la solidarité n'est pas suffisante. Il faut que ce soit un droit, il faut que ce soit une justice pour tous. Donc, mais commencer par la solidarité, c'est déjà, on peut en faire un paramètre clé. Merci beaucoup. Alcaldesa. ¿Tiene algunas respuestas pensando en las preguntas que ha estado haciendo de cómo hacer que las finanzas puedan apoyar y que las responsabilidades vayan con finanzas? Porque no puede haber responsabilidades solas. Francisco hablaba de compartir las responsabilidades, pero tienen que ir con los recursos, ¿no?
Claro, lo que ya habíamos dicho antes de que es importante descentralizar. Tenemos una cierta descentralización, pero solo el nombre. Realmente se necesita descentralizar en verdad los recursos. Y nuevamente voy a repetir lo mismo, es importante que los cooperantes puedan ver la manera de trabajar directamente con los gobiernos locales. Sabemos que cada país, cada gobierno tiene una regla, ¿no? Pero hay las maneras. Por ejemplo, la cooperación a través de los aliados. Hay aliados que están en diferentes países y en el caso, por ejemplo, de Bolivia, siempre tratamos de trabajar lo poco que queda fuera del nivel central, trabajarlo con los aliados, que son justamente fundaciones internacionales como UNICEF, WWF, ¿no? ¿Cómo? No es suficiente. No es suficiente porque son las maneras que encontramos para traer recursos. lo plantearía de que tal vez en la cooperación internacional, si tiene limitaciones con los países, entonces que trate de que el porcentaje de inversión sea más alto con los aliados que tiene, ¿no? Ejemplo, en este momento nosotros en mi ciudad vamos a construir 1000 baños de la cooperación sueca a través de UNICEF. Pero esto queda como un 10-15% que pasa a UNICEF para poder invertir. Entonces hacemos la gestión y eso vaya directo. Por eso necesitamos inversiones directas a los gobiernos locales para realmente poder impulsar el trabajo que realizamos cada día. Y no nos olvidemos de que a través también de estas reuniones, cuando estamos en encuentros con autoridades locales, ¿no? Contra alcaldes, estuvimos en Brasil ahora, es importante el fortalecimiento realmente de nuestras ciudades, es importante que todos estamos trabajando en camino a la COP30, ¿no? En nuestros planteamientos que también se va a llevar nuestras voces hasta la COP. Entonces la unidad entre los gobiernos locales a nivel mundial es importante.
Muchísimas gracias. Creo que Belém, siendo un París más 10, y luego pensar un Belém más 10 nos lleva al 2035. Y creo que Belém es importante que entre dentro de la perspectiva de lo que estamos planteando hoy, que dentro de la estrategia general de los parámetros que estamos comentando, que Belém entre en esta visión para que podamos guardar la unificación. Y para eso la idea era, ¿vamos todos a Belém? Claro que sí, pero tenemos que traer a Brasil también a nosotros, ¿no? Y ahora iremos a Rodrigo. Pero por ahora le paso el micrófono a mi compañero Adrià Duarte, que es jefe de la Comisión de Democracia Local y de Derechos Humanos, para el tercer round. En tus manos.
Thank you very much, Firdau. Good afternoon, everyone. I think we're having a very interesting and important conversation on the future steps, next steps of the climate and justice and social justice agenda, with looking to the COP, to Belém. So I'm going to give you the floor for your reactions. So, Yunus, if you want to start from the ICLEI, your reaction, your thoughts about this discussion, and what do you think you can introduce to the conversation?
Thank you, especially congratulations for this format, and it's really great to have this futuristic discussion. While listening to all the debate, I just tried to remember how did we come here, the 1990s. The world was a village, we thought, and it was two types of globalization, the good globalization and the bad globalization. We are on the good side of it, but it was not easy. These conventions, it was political also driven. Climate was the global north and European and American agenda. Draft was only relevant for Africa, and nature was only in Latin America. That was the thinking at that time. And now, 30 years later, everyone has all these problems and solutions at the same time. And then the 2015s came. We merged Millennium Development Goals and all the sustainability agenda, but things are also not still in the correct pathway. So in the post-2030, I think we should all take lessons learned. But also, let's be aware, it's in our hands to make it better. If we leave it to someone else, it will not be for us. And we are much more powerful than what we were 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Let's be realistic. That's why it is taking so much time to convince others, because they feel the power is shifting. Power is shifting to this part of the world. So the more we are collaborative, the more better we can design the new future. And you were asking for the keywords. I was thinking a post-2030 agenda in three discussions. Technically, it should be interconnected. Digitally, and all these solutions we have should be this criteria. Ecologically, I agree, it should be self-sufficient. That we should be able to live where we are without necessarily depending on any others, but also being aware that we should be conscious about what we consume and what we produce as waste and resources. And politically just in terms of within our boundaries, within our territories, but also across the world. If we can manage these three,
that could be something that we can start to build, or if we can aim for this 3, then we can build a new world. And just on final words, I mean, this agenda of convergence of these 3 Rio conventions, we would start this year in June with the daring cities among all these convention secretaries and partners. So I think what you are now producing here is excellent input to this debate. So thank you very much.
Also to mention the importance of the power that we have, no? That it's important to mention that we have power, but we need to use it in the correct way. So now I'm going to move to Natalia Uribe from Regions Force, and also if you can bring this perspective from the regions, also the role that needs to be put on the table from the regions.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I join the colleagues in saying it's a great format. First idea that came to my mind is, yes, we are very far from the drastic emission reductions mandated by science, that science has been alerting for years. So a first question for me looking to the future is, how can we better listen to science? How can we make sure that policies is really informed by science and that we do it in a way that is more agile? That would be a first reflection. Second, every fraction of a degree counts as we see the escalating impacts around the world. And yes, we are now all impacted, but we are not all impacted in the same ways, right? So I think that really being aware that that this is exacerbating existing inequalities is important, and that as local and regional governments, we can only be radically committed to addressing vulnerabilities and to climate justice. And thinking about how a society is measured by the way it treats the most vulnerable people, right? I think that there we have to really stand close to that concept and show that we are there. Leading by example is yet that nothing has been invented that is better than that, right? So we can only lead by example. And I was thinking that, yes, for the ecological transition to be done in a just way, there's a lot that has been already proven about that. And we remember the Gilets jaunes in France. So when you don't do it in a way that is socially equitable, it backfires. In Regions 4, we were interested in looking the justice dimension, but not regarding decarbonization, which is, of course, really necessary, but also in adaptation and resilience. And a couple of years ago, we developed a report that it's the Regions Adapt report on justice applied to climate adaptation. And there we found some interesting things, like how are regions incorporating justice in their adaptation strategies and plans. We saw good examples, like, for example, Minas Gerais in Brazil, who has justice as a key pillar, guiding principle, and a cross-cutting element across the whole adaptation plan, and how they are enabling the conditions for their municipalities. There are 853 municipalities, and they're supporting them to develop the Adaptation Vulnerability Index. So that's also a good example of multi-level support. And then we also saw some things to think about, like in the vulnerability and risk assessment, some regions were only looking at the climate hazards, but not necessarily the social vulnerabilities, the different groups, and how they were differently impacted by climate. So that's a lesson learned and something to look into for the future. Another one is that not necessarily all the vulnerability and risk assessments were informing the adaptation plans and strategies. So we have to ensure that that connection is made and that the adaptation plans and strategies actually are targeting the most vulnerable and building resilience. And moving forward, just the last element, we're really excited about working on a concept, emerging concept that is just resilience, precisely to bring like an overarching umbrella concept that can bring together the Rio Conventions, the Agenda 2030, the leaving no one behind legacy that we shouldn't leave, and that we really think about giving high priority on building resilience, not just adapting or reacting, but really in a strategic and transformational way from the territories with the natural ecosystems and the social and cultural ecosystems as well.
Thank you very much, Natalia, for your perspective, and also to put on the table the importance to this comprehensive and multi-level approach of all the different agendas, climate agendas and climate like priorities to be coordinated all together, because of course, even if it's different topics, it needs to be like, thinking in a common approach, no? I think the colleagues from Chian also want to make some intervention, maybe I think related also to the issue of culture, related to the sustainable agenda, so please. Have the floor.
Thank you. I still remember that Menti survey in this morning, and the third question,
asking the keyword to the 2030 agenda. I'm so encouraged and impressed that the culture and peace are paid a lot of attention. So I have to mention culture towards the post-2030 agenda. I think culture will be the central force shaping the post-2030 world. Culture evolves from a supplement to development into the operation system of civilizational progress, transitioning humanity from competition to shared future. So first, culture can balance the globalization and the localization. Strengthening culture sovereignty can fight back against the digital age's sameness and push for localization, not globalization, where global connectivity coexists with local identities. Let's take a Chinese animated film,哪吒 2, as the example. Maybe you heard about that. It just crossed $1.66 billion at the box office, making it the second highest grossing animated film globally, and it's on track to hit the #1. The movie is a mix of Eastern storytelling and universal emotions, keeping its cultural roots while breaking down barriers. It's basically a blueprint for now localization could work in the post-2030 agenda era. Also, the second is culture as the innovation engine, mixing traditional wisdom with the modern technology like AI, biotechnology, can spark cross-civilization solutions. Back to the movie哪吒 2, its crazy collaboration and technological breakthroughs show how tech and culture can work hand in hand. The last, but not the last one is the new language for global politics. Continuously emphasizes the prosperous coexisting of different excellent cultures is conducive to strengthening mutual understandings between different cultures. So let's hope culture diplomacy becomes the go-to tool for solving conflicts, emerging as a new language for conflict resolution and building a shared future for the human beings. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for also bringing this so important approach of culture and technology, and also how culture is so important also to build this common narrative that we need for this transformation. So it's so important to bring culture also in these debates, and it's a perfect transition because we're moving to Stephen Weiber from the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions, and I think maybe you can continue on this issue of culture and also maybe AI and technology and the impacts in culture for the future agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to go into French as I'm conscious that a lot of people are also speaking their second language here. Donc, tout d'abord, je voulais juste faire un point que je crois qu'est assez basique. C'est très important quand on pense à l'action climatique, qu'on ne passe pas toute la responsabilité aux communautés, aux individus, parce que enfin, ce sont les grandes entreprises, les acteurs au niveau mondial qui ont leur part de responsabilité aussi. Donc, tout d'abord, en même temps, dans une situation où il est absolument nécessaire d'avoir des changements de comportement au niveau de la communauté, au niveau des individus. Et surtout, ce n'est pas seulement des changements de comportement pour les bobos. Il faut que ce soit quelque chose qui soit partagé, qui soit accessible, qui soit possible pour tout le monde. Et enfin, ce dont on a besoin afin d'effectuer ces changements de comportement, l'un, c'est la possibilité de le faire. En ce moment, on a tendance à déresponsabiliser les individus, les communautés. Donc, il faut créer les possibilités. Les solutions ne vont pas être les mêmes d'une communauté à l'autre, pour individu à l'autre. Mais l'approche, avec la prise en compte des sensibilités, de la culture, de la façon de faire, c'est important. Ces principes doivent être universels. Et en fait, on a vu l'année dernière dans les rapports sur la mise en œuvre des ODD qu'en effet, il y avait des exemples géniaux, surtout des pays avec une grande population indigène, où on prenait ça en compte. Il y avait vraiment cet effort écouter, de laisser le pouvoir. Et enfin, le deuxième pas, c'est vraiment cette capacitation, donner la possibilité. Enfin, d'abord, c'est une question de ressources, ça c'est clair, mais aussi c'est laisser la marge de manœuvre, de donner l'accès au savoir, donner l'accès aux ressources intellectuelles et faire, enfin, on a beaucoup parlé de l'importance de faire confiance aux jeunes, mais c'est aussi une question de faire confiance aux gens, en général de faire ça. Et troisième point, c'est, enfin, on peut donner la responsabilité, on peut essayer d'effectuer des changements de comportement, mais pour faire ça de manière efficace, il faut de l'inspiration. Et ça, c'est vraiment un rôle pour la culture. Et c'est un rôle très important. Le collègue de Tinjin l'a déjà mentionné, l'importance si on va changer les esprits, il faut de l'esprit pour faire ça. Donc voilà, les paramètres dont on peut parler, enfin, j'ai noté culture en tant que moyen de changer le comportement et savoir. Enfin, en écrivant ça, je me suis rendu compte qu'enfin, l'idée que la culture et le savoir sont des choses différentes, ça vient de gens qui ressemblent à moi. Ce n'est pas un concept universel, que culture et savoir sont différents. Mais en effet, quelque chose qu'on pourrait bien faire dans le contexte de l'agenda post-2030, c'est vraiment mettre ça au cœur. Parce que c'est quelque chose qui manque vraiment. Le rôle de la culture, le rôle du savoir de l'individu. La science, ça compte beaucoup, mais aussi de l'individu, de donner ses possibilités. Ça va être quelque chose de vraiment clair. Et surtout, aborder ces questions, culture, savoir, pas de manière isolée, mais vraiment de manière isolée, juste comme on essaie d'aborder la nature, la culture, de manière intégrée aussi. Donc, merci.
Merci beaucoup. Very interesting approach also, linking culture, the capacity of listen to the others, trust that has been also like during the day, that this importance of trust and creating these spaces that for changing and for transportation, we need to respect each other, to trust each other, and to listen to each other. So it's really so important that what you mentioned. So finally, for finalizing this round, we have Rodrigo Fur from the AMB. So I invite you to sit on the front, on the center of the table. From Brazil, the Association of Brazilian Municipalities. Also, you will be the host of the COP, so you can bring this approach of from Belém to the cities. And also, Brazil will host the BRICS cities. So I think it's important also if you can bring this perspective. Maybe BRICS can be also another way to rethink about the global way of governance. So please go ahead.
Perfect. So that's a very privileged space to be, actually. Besides our elected officials here, myself seeing Mayor Ana Lucia, who is our regional leader through FLACMA, and also the presidency of Brazil here represented by Francisco. So for me, representing ABM, that's a very privileged space to be in. But my role here is a little bit, perhaps push a little bit further our discussion that we have been having so far. And that's not something that is very hard to do, because as a Brazilian, we have been building up these frustrations in the last few years. And in the beginning this morning, we had like this Mentimeter exercise, and a lot of people have put that the national government is the central actor, or maybe should be the central actor in implementing the SDGs. And that's something that I can resonate very clearly. Brazil has gone through 4 years of denialist government, and it has struck local governments and our infrastructure and our structure and our feelings of hope very deeply. Even though we have like this international solidarity, UCLG and all the members here have been a part of that, it strikes, it leaves some tissue, it leaves some scars on the way that you see the federalism, what you can build. And what we have been trying to do with COP30 right now is to rebuild this trust. You guys probably have heard about this commitment to climate federalism. That is something that we have built in Brazil. And it is a little of an ambitious concept that we have tried to create, because it has involved the president of Brazil, Lula was there. It involved a lot of governors, including the one from Minas Gerais, Espírito Santo. A lot of our mayors were there as well. So that's something that was built in a multi-level perspective. But there is this limitation of how far this can go. And just 2 days before André Correa del Lago, who is the COP30 presidency, was announced, I had the privilege of being with him when they had like a discussion about what could Brazil bring to COP30 and what is the role that Amazon cities can play on that. Because ABM is also a proud member of the Amazon Cities Forum that we created 2 years ago at the Amazon Cooperation Treaty. And there we struck a little of some frustration, I guess, as well, around what is the venue and what is the limit of what COP30 can bring to the discussion. We have been seeing the last few days, the deadline for countries to submit their revised NDC has gone past. And very few countries have, in fact, already reported their NDC. And Brazil made the movement of putting that first. We were the second country to do that, with the hope, and that's the word, with the hope that will bring a momentum, bring a movement. And in fact, that has not been installed. We feel that there is a need for a discussion of, is the UN right now the place for us to have this conversation? Is the countries that are part of the UN able and willing to have the discussions? And that's why we, alongside a lot of our members here who are part of the BRICS Plus countries, have decided to create this association within the framework of the UCLG, because we will be forced to have another perspective of multilateralism in the next few years, decades. The UN, of course, is our main course of action, but the Brazil presidency feels that we need to create these other sources of mini multilateralism for us to create momentum. That's what we have done with G20. That's what we are trying to do with BRIC Plus. And some of you maybe perhaps were in Rio at the G20. And what Brazil's presidency has put forward as the main focus of G20 was the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. Because when we look at the SDGs, Brazil is still stuck at 1 and 2. We are still trying to deal with these very basic services. And that's what the elected officials here have mentioned so clearly. When I speak with my mayors in Brazil, they are clear that they need to have access to these very basic social public services: water, food, waste management. They don't have the capacities to do that. So we need to find a way to make sure that our conversation here can be struck at the local level. It needs to have this sense of reality and an implementation that is possible to be done. You guys will probably go to Belém as well. If you have not gone to any city in the Amazon, you'll be struck with a different reality. When I talk about waste management in the Amazon, one of the things that we struggle a lot is because a lot of cities in the Amazon are made of several small islands. And how can you manage waste when you need to use your boats, small boats, the fishermen boats, in order to move the waste around? And that's something that is not easily done, and we don't have the funding to implement this sort of action. You'll also be struck a little bit with the lack of air conditioning, as Francisco have said. It's not a luxury in Brazil. As heat and humidity grows, air conditioning is going to be a basic necessity for survival. And Belém is one of the cities that has a lot of energy generation, but the energy is distributed to other places in the country, so they have a very expensive energy costs. And that's like the basic things of the local reality that cities and mayors needs to deal with, where climate change is not necessarily their own priority. And it makes sense that somehow we can make their priority also to deal with that. And for us, and wrapping up here, it's also a privilege being here because we have been through ABM with other associations in Brazil, FNP, you guys probably know, and others. We have been trying to use our voice to bring this discussion to the Brazil federal government. And it's not it is by design that me and Francisco are here, because we have trying to work together to put this climate federalism in movement in a way. And we try to use like Brazil convening power in this year, so the COP can perhaps bring a little bit of this hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo, for this perspective. For us, it was very important because we are all heading to Belém, and Belém is like, yeah, this year we're going to Belém. But it was important to bring the conversation of Belém here in the middle of the Global Task Force and exchange upon it in the middle of the... So before giving the reaction to our local leaders, I would like to open the floor to the partners, but also to everyone that would like to speak in the room before giving the floor back to the elected. Is there any? No? Okay. Partners, would you like to make some feedback? You wanted to finish a point, Sasha?
So finance mechanisms. So we are very focused on this issue. So in terms of drought, we have the International Drought Resilience Alliance. And this is supported by the government of Spain. And it's meant to further the political momentum at a very high level. And so we've created that. And now we're backing it up with actual capacities and finance. So the International Drought Resilience Observatory is now a collaboration with Yale University and other partners. It's a decision support tool that can use data and information that's tailored for local uses. Okay, so there you're getting to that technical capacity, administrative capacity, and now we'll talk about the money. So we have in the UNCCD, we have the global mechanism, which is not a fund, because we have the GEF, the Global Environment Fund, we have the GCF, we have Adaptation Fund, and all the other ones. But we support countries in terms of putting together attractive, bankable projects, creating a pipeline of projects. And this we see as a very big bottleneck to local governments attracting that type of finance. And so the global mechanism is now working on a couple different things. One is the Drought Fund, and that is about de-risking private investment because public-private partnerships are crucial. Water is something that the private sector uses a lot. In many countries, it's the majority, agriculture, other industries. So this Drought Fund is about that de-risking. So we have the private finance coming in, but it's also about developing these projects that are focused on multiple benefits delivered by the water infrastructure, agriculture in terms of its water use, and using green and blue infrastructure to accomplish some of the things that we need to do, that nature can deliver for us without causing ecological, environmental damage. The other thing that the global mechanism is working on is a drought insurance model. And many of you, if you're familiar with Australia and some of the other developed countries, they link sustainable land and water management to the incentives and the premiums that farmers and other land users are getting for drought insurance. And so we are developing that with many partners and so forth. We work with the European Investment Bank. We work with private fund managers in France to move in various different directions focused on drought and water stress. We see these as very good entry points because a lot of these projects need to be developed at the local level. They need to be championed by local authorities. And this is something that we see in terms of our future as a convention. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha, Alexander, for this concrete proposal, but more opening a pathway for a concrete work together, and we will surely follow up on that. Thank you very much. I believe that somehow the work of UNCCD was not very known up until now, maybe, as you said at the beginning, but in the coming years, I think local governments will be even more interested in the work that you do, and especially with the work that we have begun last Riyadh. And I would like to thank you again for the cooperation and for calling us. I would like now to, is there nobody? Sí, Marcela, please.
Sí, gracias, Firdaus. Bueno, voy a hablar en español, pero no quería dejar frente a esta tan selecta mesa o living de hacer una pregunta en relación a esto que los ha ocupado toda esta tarde, como es cómo nos imaginamos el post-2030. Para aquellos que tenemos varios años dentro del municipalismo y vemos cómo ha crecido el movimiento municipalista con la fortaleza de CGLU desde el 2004, ¿no? Yo fui testigo de esa unión entre el IULA y la Federación. Esto que nos está colocando la Secretaria General desde ayer, que es la democracia local, a mí me gustaría rápidamente conocer la mirada de ustedes desde las distintas regiones, desde sus perspectivas. ¿Cómo ven? Si ven fortalecidas, si ven debilitadas. Yo vengo de una región que mi percepción es un debilitamiento de las democracias locales, casi vapuleadas, muchas veces por los contextos nacionales o incluso por organizaciones internacionales e incluso por organizaciones privadas. Y pareciera que fuera una estrategia, ¿no?, de debilitar esas democracias locales. Entonces, les coloco esta cuestión. ¿Cuál es su mirada? ¿Cómo no podemos hablar de cambio climático con todo lo que significan las 6 dimensiones que planteó el equipo de CGLU en la persona de Firdaus, sin hablar de democracia? Y si nuestras democracias están débiles, cada vez más este movimiento es un espacio de resistencia a esos ataques. Entonces, les coloco esa cuestión y cuál es su mirada de la reflexión. Gracias, Firdaus.
Gracias, Marcela. Please keep the question in your heads. I would like to go to another question, another comment that is coming from Istanbul Municipality. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay. So thank you very much for hosting us here. My name is Oğuz. I'm representing Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality and also the Union of Municipalities of Turkey. I would like to just have 2 comments. The first thing is, if you're going to talk about the post-2030 agenda, and if you're talking about hope, I think we have to define the crisis, the poly-crisis that we're dealing with. So that's the first point, and in that sense, I think we're now actually dealing with a new uncertainty period with the change in the international politics, especially in the United States. So when we're talking about all these topics and all the issues, so we know that we're now in a multipolar world, and the leading country, United States, has been changing a lot since the last elections. So this is one thing that we have to keep in our mind. And the only thing that we can do in that sense is to work with the international organization to pressure more over those countries which are turning through a more let's say, populistic structure. So that's one thing that I have to mention. And the second thing is, yes, we're very hopeful about the future while we're talking about the problems and we're trying to deal with the solutions. But one thing that we have to keep in our mind is we are in the edge. So we're now very far from 2030. We're not very far from the indicators that we have put decades ago. But we're going through the crisis, and I think we have to talk more about the crisis management, not only preparing or trying to keeping ourselves away from the crisis, but also we have to think about how we're going to manage the crisis. That's one thing that we have to keep in our mind while we're designing the next year's work in UCLG and other regional organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is a very important point. Very important point. Thank you so much. And I would like to recall the fact that loss and damage for UCLG is going from the climate change fights against climate change to the crisis management, to the loss and damage management. This is why we are developing this agenda in consensus with the other partners. But it is the key point why we are talking today about the post-2030 agenda. Thank you very much for recalling that. Also, I would like to recall maybe something that I didn't say at the beginning. This scheme that we have shown from the IPCC, they are giving us 10 to 12 years. That's all we have in our hands. And I remember in Cali, with our co-president representing UCLG, listening to Deborah Roberts, the experts, saying we have to bring this disruptive message all around the world. We don't have time. The time is left, so what do we want to do for the next 10 years? And this is where I was talking about the Belém plus 10. Maybe it is really something we need to build a specific agenda around these 10 years, because otherwise there will be no reversibility for the planet and no going back to making reversible the damage done. No other intervention from the floor? No? Okay, so I would like to give the floor to our elected. Please. After the intervention, I'm bringing, after bringing Brazil with us and Belém, how do you see these 10 years? And what would be the key parameter for you to talk about this future agenda? Please.
Thank you, Firdaus. First of all, I will respond to what said our friend Marcela about local democracy. Estoy de acuerdo contigo, Marcela. No podemos hablar de sostenibilidad, de climate, de todo, sin una verdadera democracia y democracia local. Y no podemos hablar de una nueva agenda sin democracia. Le hemos dicho, Emilia le ha dicho, estamos de acuerdo. Quiero decir, para finalizar, es el momento de pensar a una alianza estratégica entre las ciudades y regiones de una parte y los otros partes de la ciudad que son la sociedad civil y toda. Entonces, una alianza estratégica entre gobiernos locales y regionales, entre la sociedad civil en el mundo, la ciudadanía, para hacer frente a ese movimiento de centralización que estamos viendo ahora en muchas partes del mundo. Another things, I think that on peut pas parler aussi de l'agenda mondial s'il n'y a pas l'approche multiniveau. Déjà au centre, au début, on ne va pas attendre des initiatives globales comme on l'avait vu au niveau climat, Marrakech Partnership, l'initiative globale Surge, Champ. Non, dès le début, au sein de l'agenda, et un des principes fondamentaux, là, il y a le multiniveau. C'est pour cela qu'on pourra atteindre de tous les objectifs qu'on va établir au niveau du nouveau agenda. On parle de 10 ans, 12 ans, IPCC, etc. C'est le momentum, c'est l'emergency, il y a donc une urgence dans ça. Et je terminerai par la troisième réflexion et aussi une question. Moi, cette année, par exemple, en 2024, j'ai participé à 2 COP. La Climate COP à Bakou et aussi la désertification COP à Riyad. J'ai vu des efforts ici et là. Et il y a aussi des ambitions, il y a aussi des choses qui n'ont pas été atteintes. On n'était pas content par rapport à un certain nombre de résultats. Mais je crois que joindre les 3 conventions de Kyoto, donc climat, biodiversité, désertification, il faut qu'ils s'allient beaucoup mieux ensemble pour faire une force, pour ne pas retourner en arrière. Je crois que c'est une des priorités. Je crois lors des négociations, des discussions de Bonn, je crois un des sujets qu'il y aura, et puis profiter de la COP de Belém avec le leadership de Lula, pour avoir cette idée, pas seulement des solutions basées sur la nature, mais un agenda intégré climat, biodiversité et désertification. Et ma dernière question, je remercie l'UNCDD d'avoir joint et d'être ici à la Global Task Force et d'avoir co-organisé, bien sûr, le forum des maires à Riyad. Et je crois que c'est une question comment les villes, à travers la Global Task Force, aura une place importante, mieux que dans l'univers climat, l'UNFCCC, avec l'UNCDD dès maintenant une place importante au niveau de la table de cette COP. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Monsieur le maire. Effectivement, c'est pour ça que nous avons été, depuis CGLU, avec la Global Task Force aux 3 COP. C'est parce que les pertes et dommages intègrent pour nous les 3 agendas, les 3 conventions de Rio. Absolument. Et c'est dans ce sens qu'on a commencé à le travailler avec ICLE et avec nos partenaires. Mais très important que ce soit vu, reconnu et demandé depuis les gouvernements locaux. Merci beaucoup. Merci. Et on prend en compte, on prend note de votre question. Sherazade, quel serait votre récap des conversations et comment envisager d'emmener la commission de démocratie locale non seulement à Belém, mais dans 10 ans? Quel serait l'agenda?
Alors pour moi, il y a, toujours en partant de l'expérience de Grigny, pour moi il y a un agenda à la fois local et international. Donc d'un point de vue local, j'aimerais bien insister sur un exemple très concret à Grigny qui bénéficie justement aux plus précaires et pas qu'aux bobos. Donc à Grigny, en fait, on a, c'est très particulier, mais c'est l'une des villes les plus pauvres de France. Et en ce moment, en fait, en France, il y a une explosion du prix du gaz. Donc forcément, ça se ressent dans les factures des foyers. Et justement, à Grigny aussi, c'est ça qui est assez fou, c'est que souvent dans les territoires les plus pauvres, on a aussi des grandes richesses naturelles. Et en fait, en région parisienne, il y a un bassin qui est souterrain, donc vraiment sous terre, qui est en fait chaud naturellement, donc entre 55 et 85 degrés Celsius. Et donc à Grigny, on a un concept, c'est la géothermie, qui est une technique justement qui vise à prendre les eaux chaudes souterraines pour qu'ensuite on les évacue, enfin de boue, etc. Et que ce soit ensuite justement directement dans les chauffages des foyers et dans l'eau qu'on utilise pour se doucher, dans l'évier, pour faire la vaisselle, etc. Et donc ça, en fait, ça a permis aux foyers qui en bénéficient de baisser les factures de 30%. Donc c'est énorme. Et c'est justement voilà, une façon de lier la justice sociale à la justice climatique, parce que ça permet aussi de baisser grandement les gaz à effet de serre. Donc voilà, donc là c'est voilà, des choses très particulières qu'on peut faire au sein des villes, en sachant que le maire de Philippe Rio, le maire de Grigny, est allié à d'autres maires de la région pour faire ça. Donc ça, c'est la première chose. Et on a du coup une société d'exploitation des ressources naturelles qui est publique. Donc là aussi, sur la question des financements, c'est une façon justement de gérer ça. Et ensuite, pour moi, l'agenda, il est aussi international, parce que c'est vrai que malheureusement, on ne peut pas tout faire tout seul, surtout une petite ville comme Grigny. Mais comme on a un jumelage avec le camp de réfugiés palestiniens d'Aïda, on essaie vraiment de les aider. J'aimerais juste citer une citation du Premier ministre israélien Yitzhak Rabin, qui disait déjà en 1992 que la question en fait de l'eau et du partage d'eau, elle était primordiale, et que sans ça on n'allait jamais avoir la paix au Proche-Orient. Donc en fait, le fait de totalement faire comme si de rien n'était, ça allait vraiment pas changer les choses. Et on a besoin de ça aussi pour qu'il y une paix durable malgré le cessez-le-feu. Et j'invite vraiment tout le monde à essayer d'aider comme on peut. En France, on a une loi qui s'appelle la loi Oudin, où en fait on peut avoir 1% du budget des agences régionales d'eau qui peuvent justement être consacrées entièrement à l'international. Donc ça peut être aussi une façon de faire, pas uniquement pour la Palestine, mais pour plein d'autres pays qui souffrent justement là-dessus. Et voilà, je m'arrêterai là. Mais en tout cas, je remercie vraiment le CGLU, notamment la Commission sur les droits humains, parce que justement, grâce à vous, grâce à Adria, on peut faire de grandes choses ensemble. Et ça fait plaisir aussi de pouvoir voir des personnes qui viennent du monde entier pour avoir justement un agenda progressiste qui bénéficie aussi aux plus précaires. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Alcaldesa, ¿cuáles serían cómo vería la agenda de los 10 próximos años y cómo Belém se integraría ahí, sobre todo usted que es líder de Flagma y no solamente alcaldesa, pero líder de Flagma y copresidenta de CGLU?
Bueno, uno de los temas interesantes que alguien tocó es sobre esa alianza. Primero hablamos de la alianza entre gobiernos locales, pero sí la alianza entre los actores locales todos, ¿no? Eso es muy importante. Y, por ejemplo, llevar a la COP estas alianzas. Por ejemplo, hablamos de nuestros pueblos indígenas, campesinos, su cultura, sus usos y costumbres, ¿no? Que tiene cada uno, que conocemos muchas veces antes de la ciencia, ¿no? Justamente por la experiencia de vivir en ciertas áreas, tienen un conocimiento muy grande, muy profundo y también alternativas a muchos problemas. Entonces es importante involucrar mucho más estas organizaciones locales, ¿no? Darles mucho más fuerza en eventos como justamente la COP que se llevará adelante. Importante también buscar la manera cómo nos concientizamos, cómo realmente empezamos a cambiar un poquito nuestra mentalidad. Yo siempre estoy pensando en algo que yo siento que nosotros, la humanidad, venimos retrocediendo. Estamos en un retroceso. Decía el otro día, hay temas que pensamos que es parte de una historia, pero la vivimos hoy en día, las guerras, las actitudes de grandes políticos muy poderosos, países poderosos. Entonces vivimos un retroceso. Por eso es muy importante involucrarnos cada vez más con los actores locales y hacerlos participar de estas actividades. Creo que ellos también van a tener mucho más poder, ¿no? Para ayudar a que los gobiernos locales logremos el poder que queremos, que es la atención del gobierno central, nacional, ¿no? Entonces ahí yo veo ese tema bastante importante que lo tomemos en cuenta.
Muchísimas gracias. Bien, I think we are nearly at the end of our session. I would like to give the floor to Pablo, but before that, to tell us the 3-4 key ideas that you have kept in the notes from everything that was said. But before that, I would like to go back to our partners for 3 words, 3 key words that you would keep from this conversation, that you have learned from this conversation.
Difícil, 3 palabras. Después de tantos desafíos, pero para mí siempre una palabra muy cara es la inclusión en todos los ámbitos, la inclusión, la alianza y para mí la más importante es democracia. Sin democracia no estaríamos aquí, no estaríamos nos encontrando diferentes localidades, diferentes puntos de vista, de acuerdo con Marcela también. De alguna forma eso estamos sufriendo en nuestros países y un diálogo en nuestros gobiernos locales. Y solo una cosita, hay que empoderar la gente de los gobiernos locales que está intentando soñar con algo distinto, en las comunidades, en los barrios, en los movimientos indígenas que están dentro de lugares chiquitos, de 1.000 habitantes, 3.000 habitantes. Hay que empoderar, hay que volver al espíritu municipalista de nuevo. Eso aprendí mucho con Fernando también en Brasil. El espíritu municipalista internacionalista. Hay que empoderar a esa gente y que piensen globalmente y en sus problemáticas locales para resolver. Empezar por ahí.
Muchísimas gracias. Sasha, 3 words?
Okay, I'll try. How to convince everybody to have coordinated action and to accept equitable sharing of benefits. How are we going to go forward with that? But that's the only way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the only way. So there we are. Alliances,
yes.
Inclusivity. I won't mention the D word. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will keep dreaming of different solutions, and and exactly what you said. I mean, the question of how to generate a different coalition to think together towards the same cause with shared benefit. I think it's the only way. I believe so. The question is how to build it. but we can begin. Joanna, 3 words.
Gracias. Muy difícil regresar con 3 palabras. Creo que el tema de las alianzas es clave, pero tenemos que pensar en las alianzas como un pulpo. O sea, alianzas que van en diferentes direcciones y en diferentes niveles. Tenemos que pensar en las alianzas desde esos actores locales, dentro de los actores locales, pero también en las alianzas hacia las redes de ciudades, hacia los gobiernos nacionales y regionales, y pensar en cómo esto es como una estrella que tiene múltiples puntas y que conecta diferentes intereses y diferentes puntos. Creo que ahí también entran los temas de integración y de gobernanza multinivel, y podríamos seguir, ¿no? Cómo traemos las diferentes voces hacia un mismo punto en común. Pero creo que también es muy importante de lo que escuchamos hoy pensar en la confianza en el nivel local, en la confianza de lo local, en la confianza del poder transformador de las acciones locales, en la confianza de las comunidades locales, en la confianza del trabajo que ha venido creciendo desde estas voces que se reúnen a soñar un futuro mejor. Y para mí, desde un punto de vista muy personal, la cultura es una palanca para el cambio. Es un elemento clave para la transformación. No podemos pensar en una transformación consciente, equitativa, justa, inclusiva, si no partimos desde la cultura.
Fantástico, fantástico. Pablo, 3, 4 ideas.
Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Firdaus. Thank you, dear panelists, moderators, and respondents for this rich and thought-provoking discussion. I've been taking careful notes, so this is why I'm reading, and I hope I can do justice to what has been discussed today. So I'd like to highlight 3 things. The first one, I think it's very encouraging to be talking about parameters. I think this means we're ready to measure the set of factors that will shape the future of cities. If we're there, then it's a good thing to be. This requires, I think, science and evidence-based policies and strong local democracy. Climate adaptation, resilience, and loss and damage must be locally led but globally supported, ensuring equity, inclusivity, and sustainable management of the commons, including land, water, and food systems, through multi-level governance. We need an integrated agenda where climate, biodiversity, and certification reflect the needs and potential of local and subnational governments. Second, as we navigate broken rules and rising climate anxiety, we must center justice and hope to rebuild lost partnerships and generate new ones. Climate and social justice must be seen as inseparable, and the ecological transition cannot be a luxury. It must be accessible to all. Coordinated action at all levels and culture will be essential to uphold territorial local resilience. And as much as we integrate science, we must also integrate indigenous communities, local communities, and farmers to build upon the knowledge and ensure a just and equitable ecological transition.
That's not 3 or 4, but go on.
Local and subnational governments need direct access to finance that is just, predictable, and responsive to local needs. Financing must be structured to enable long-term planning, empower local leadership, and address the realities of loss and damage. Without fair and efficient financial mechanisms, local governments cannot fully implement climate solutions or protect the most vulnerable. So I think this is what I get from the session.
Super.
I think, as Emilia said earlier today, we must tell our own story, we must document our impact and shape our political narratives on what we have been doing. So Thank you very much for the session. And
thank you. Thank you all. It has been fantastic. I loved it. Emilia, it has been fantastic.
I agree with you, and my job is just to close the day. I was about to miss this session because I had a parallel meeting, and I am so happy that they are running late and I didn't have to miss it. So congratulations to everyone. I really like the format. Thank you for those very inspiring conversations that you have had in these different rounds. I am keeping one question which I hope will be answered for us on Thursday, which is the link between this conversation and the whole social justice agenda and the climate justice agenda, which is, from our perspective, a very important part of the discussion that we need to have around the local social covenant. So how can we make sure that this agenda lands in our recommendations as well of the social summit? So I think we have now many ideas, and it is important to bring that there. And thank you very much to the mayors, to the elected officials for willing to sit with us in these hybrid formats. Tomorrow is your big day with youth, and I want to remind you a couple of things. Now, first, I want to highlight how many of you have been looking at your X account or your LinkedIn account or your Blue Sky account. If you haven't, you should look, because UCLG Communication and Outreach team has been doing a great job. And it's these people over there, Jose, Viviana, Loana, Sara. I know Prachi is somewhere behind. There is no magic here. Eh? There is only magic hands, but there is no magic. It's actually people doing the job. So please do look at your posts and see in social media, repost, and make sure that you pass through the message. Tomorrow then, this intergenerational dialogue with youth, I'm sure many of these ideas are going to permeate to that dialogue. Then we have obviously our presidency meeting. It's a closed-door meeting, starting with a Metropolis special session. And those of you that are not participating in the closed-door meeting, simply because you are not part of our presidency, you will be able to go into a very interesting study tour. And if you have questions, Jordi over there knows all about it. And it is thanks to the great hospitality and ideas of the province of Barcelona, Diputación de Barcelona, that we are able to enjoy some of the best practices that the province of Barcelona has to offer around gender equality and others. So please do check with Jordi if you have questions about that. You should have registered for that. We will tell you more about it tomorrow, indeed. Tomorrow is also the day where we're going to have a great reception at the City Hall of Barcelona. The ones that do not know the City Hall, is worth coming, not only because we are very nice people that are going to be happy and having a time with you, but because the City Hall is really great and they are looking forward to welcome us. I really hope you are enjoying the retreat. I really hope you are bringing new ideas home. And I want in particular to thank many of the people that have left already. To the Global Task Force partners, thank you very much for your inputs yesterday and today. And to our members, enjoy the rest of the evening in Barcelona. Thank you, ECHO team. Thank you very much. Congratulations.